Good evening and welcome to Mindful Life 274. I believe we are on right now. Is it 274 Mindful Life? Welcome. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 22nd of August in the year of our Lord 2023. Yeah, time is flying, isn't it? And another day in the beautiful Twin Isle Republic of Trinidad and Tobago here. But you know, one of the issues that has always plagued us, and I regularly say this, to me, lots of issues in Trinidad that you hear people complaining about on the global scale, when you look at them with a bit of global perspective, you understand that some of those issues aren't as bad as some people make them out to be. But to me, one of the issues that genuinely is really bad in Trinidad and Tobago is the crime situation. Was it 20 people shot over the weekend? Not all died, but if you check the people shot, and this is just reported, it's something like 20 people shot in a very short period of time. That's kind of insane. We're 1.4 million people. The crime rate, the violent crime rate in Trinidad is genuinely scary, out of control on a global scale. And we're going to dive into some of that, looking at some of the communities in Trinidad and Tobago and how some of these communities are run and some of the things that make the communities the realities that they are. Why are they in that way? And she's out cool for the count. That's the skill of it, isn't it? Let's see, I'm looking for one specific article here to see if I can pull it up. About a young lady who was electrocuted also in somewhere in South, and how she was electrocuted. All right, good. So let's jump into some of these stories. Looking at, there were 3 double murders coming out of Carnage within 2 weeks or something like that. Double murders like rain coming out of Carnage within a very short period of time. And these issues stem from gang violence, allegedly. But we're going to dive into some of this as they go through some of the details with some of these stories, and see if we could look at these communities and see how these communities are the way they are. Now, something I regularly do, I'm just a curious person, really and truly. A lot of what I know, it's just the default of being a curious person. How do I know what I know? I'm curious. So a lot of the times when I hear shootings happen and stuff, or a murder happens and they give the location, I regularly look on my Google Maps. If I don't know exactly where it is, you're trying to decipher how it is. And if you look at the maps of Carnage is a unique place. There are these long singular streets that go up into a nest into the mountains, and a lot of those nests into the mountains are kind of unregulated settlements, and a lot of them have tracks in between each other, and each individual nest may have a group of people that are in control of the illegal activities there, and every now and again they fall out with each other, and it seems like that recently happened in Carnage. Let's head over there. Bringing back peace to Carnage Hills. An upsurging gang violence in Carnage by homegrown gangsters has ignited a history of violence which has marred the tiny fishing community off the Western Main Road, leading to Chagaramas, home of visiting yachties and passage to down the island homeowners. Now, they say the tiny fishing community, but I wouldn't say Carnage is a tiny fishing community. I don't know how many of you are living in Carnage or how many of you ever went inside of Carnage. Not pass on the main road going to Chagaramas or to the island owner's business to go down there. No. Up inside School Street or inside Hague Street or inside Abbey Pujade or whatever, however you pronounce that. Inside those streets, when you go up inside there, you get the understanding, yeah, that's not exactly what you would call a tiny community. There are lots of people and lots of people living on top of each other. Now, I have a belief I have a belief when I look around in the world, in Trinidad and Tobago, all around the world, I have a belief that human beings aren't supposed to live too close to each other. I hear you calling Carnage Street. Wait, J. Chris, you a Carnage man, bro? I have a belief that humans aren't supposed to be living too close to each other. If you take people and put them in too close proximity to each other, I think you end up in problems by default. Especially if they are people who are already in struggling situations. Which one of those streets you're from, J. Chris? You're from the heated areas? From Scorpion area? A rash of murders over the past 3 weeks triggered a high-level meeting with police and defense force aimed at restoring peace and calm on the hills. Head of the Homicide Bureau, Senior Superintendent Rishi Singh told Sunday Newsday the area had gained a reputation for negative behavior over the years, but admitted that, to his recollection, recently there had been a significant reduction in violence, which was interrupted by the murders over the past 3 weeks. Chairman of the Dago Martin Regional Corporation, Sigla Jack, a former chairman of the Dago Martin West Constituency Office, said he was saddened by the level of crime and criminality in TT in general, especially among young people. Carnage falls in the constituency of Prime Minister Dr. Rowley. He said he could not speak about crime in Scorpion Alley itself, but the situation seemed to be homegrown and that violence of that nature had to involve some kind of conflict with the weapon of choice being the gun. Here's why I have a problem with that. OJ Chris. There has to be a level of chance. Right, good. Here's why I have a problem with that. How are you the councillor for an area and you are saying you cannot speak about the crime in your area? To me, then you are an ineffective councillor. The reason... Listen, one of the realities, I was reading a bit of a history study today, and they were talking about one of the realities of times gone past, of times long ago. And you know the PM is just for style first, all right? Of times gone long ago, and one of the things that we really don't understand in modern times, looking back then, one of the things we don't understand is how things could just happen. How many things could just happen? Yeah, a group of men turn up at your village, and now you're a slave, just like that. Yesterday, you were living normal, happy with your family. Today, yeah, you're a slave. Or you got too drunk inside a tavern, and a crew from a ship picked you up, and you wake up in the morning sleeping off your hangover as the deckhand on a boat. You're on the HMS Bounty going somewhere. All of a sudden. Those things could just happen. Life just happened. A lot of those things just happen. But what we did in civilization, in these civilized societies, what we did was we ensured, or we created bureaucracies, we created administrative states to try and administer for every eventuality. That's the whole reason we have the political setup that we have. That's the reason you have a councillor, you have an MP, you have assistants inside there, you have your aldermen, you have your chairman of the board of the corporation board, and all of that and all of that and all of that. The reason for all of those people is to administer for the eventualities. To me, the idea of a councillor, local government style, is supposed to be someone down on the ground level. I find it ridiculous. Topic today, we're talking about crime and hotspot communities. More specifically, the hotspot communities and the poverty in those communities. You're driving normal and just end up in China due to the size of the letter. Yeah. I find it ridiculous that you're the councillor for an area. You're the person that's supposed to be the man on the ground in that area. There are 3 double murders in the area. And you can't speak on it. You have no idea what's going on. I think this is why some of these communities are the way they are. When the communities lament about being forgotten, I believe them. Good night, JR. I do believe them. Now, you all know I am not a criminal excuser. I believe crime happens generally speaking because criminals do crime. And crime breeds poverty more than poverty breeds crime. I believe that. However, if you create a neglected area, if you allow an area to be neglected, what you are doing is creating the perfect ecosystem to breed criminality. Some people talk about the broken windows policies of the United States, particularly in New York under the former Mayor Giuliani. He was one that pushed it, and under Bloomberg they expanded it, etc. And some people misunderstand the broken windows policy to some extent. The broken windows policy isn't just that you arrest people for minor offenses so that they don't move on to major offenses. It was literally speaking also about broken windows. So if you see an abandoned house and then the windows get broken, it's going to increase the possibility then that the doors will get broken. And then if the windows and doors are broken, it's going to increase the possibility that the yard becomes overgrown. And then if those three things are wrong, it's going to increase the possibility that some drug addicts move in. And if drug addicts move in, it's going to increase the possibility that crime happens on the premises. Regular non-violent drug crimes happen. And then with that happening, it's going to increase the possibility that violent crime is going to eventually happen. That's the broken windows idea. And neglect of communities does cause that. If you're in a little nest somewhere and nobody pays attention to this nest, nobody is running roads, nobody is running lights, it's just tracks connecting everything, and the legal authorities barely do anything inside there, is it any surprise when the criminal elements take a stronghold? Casey Harris says some people in the gangs don't even know why they're fighting either. Of course they don't. Jaron says the last time he was on the ground was when his godson got shot 5 years ago by police. Wow, 5 years ago. When there are no consequences for actions, those actions will continue. Exactly, Michelle. Exactly. During a visit to the community, most residents of Scorpion Alley who spoke to Newsday said they were disturbed by this uptick in violence, but continue to carry on with their lives in an almost casual manner while taking precautions such as staying in their homes if they do not have to be outside even during the day. Now, I mean, you could be amazed by that, but what you want the people to do? If you live there, and chances are, if you are already living in a community that is distressed, chances are you are living there because you don't have a plurality of options. It's not like your options are overflowing. So what do you expect the people to do? Really and truly, they have to carry on living their lives. What else is there to do? One resident said the killings did not bother him as he had previously seen a lot of blood and gore after when his cousin and another man were killed in front of him. You know, sometimes you could wonder how many residents in areas like this have some kind of PTSD on the down low. Like, I find trauma is one of the most overused words in modern times. Probably one of the most overused words. But it's genuinely traumatic. If you're living in an area, 6 people you know are murdered in 2 weeks' time. Trini Moby says, but that is just the thing. A lot of our development is car-centric. Suburban sprawl, which is extremely expensive to maintain over the long run. We follow the model largely according to post-war US development, as well as the Le Corbusier's modernist building ideas. I get you. I get what you're saying. And yes, to some extent. But to me, the solution to some of this is simply working the local government as it's intended. That's the solution to some of that. The representative in that area hears the complaints about the area and works to better it. Now, really and truly, as you talk about the way how we are building, I agree with that. And particularly the PNM government, if we're being honest. I do not like their style of creating homes. The PNM government is attempting to create homes for people and they will build Maloney. Who wants to raise a family in Maloney? PNM? And then I saw recently there was Bacchanal in South because the Senator Dharma Mahasabha, I believe, and some UNC members were creating some Bacchanal because the PNM was attempting to seize some land in South to build the next one of those high-rise buildings. There are ghettos in each borough, each with surrounding high-income communities. To some extent, yes, accountability is a very hard thing for most humans, correct? You know, I've never had anyone close died from gun violence. Once you're in badness, I does disassociate from you. Good. Very smart of you. Michelle says after a while you have to teach them that the life they live isn't a healthy way. Correct. The murders are a byproduct of the economic benefits derive from crime. 100%. Those young men aren't just murdering each other for the vibes of it. It's a money-making business. Now, the truth is, a lot of the people who are pulling the triggers aren't really making that much money. The 3 double murders, the 6 people that died in Scorpion Alley. Go look at the community. These people are not living in extravagant wealth. It's not like they seem to be millionaires inside there. So whatever they're killing each other for, yes, there are some resources involved, but it can't be that many, at least not for them. Resident Donamark said the recent murders hurt her heart so much so that she could not sleep, and some of the elderly in the community had the same problem. She said the situation brought back haunting memories of her sons, Brent, Noel, and Augustine Mark, who were killed 12 years ago on the same day in a gang war. Can you imagine that? Residents in this community. She's a resident in the community. This is traumatizing her. Why? Because she remembered 12 years back, she lost 2 sons in one day. Bam, bam, murdered. That's that. End of that. And then you're still living in this same community 12 years later, where you see 6 people, young people. A lot of those 6 may be younger than her sons even were. And you see that same thing happening. What does that do to our community? What does that do to people? And we'll go on. She recalled about 3 years ago there was a peace walk where villagers came out, even the bad men, and there was peace and love in the community for a while. I remember that. I remember when Carnage had that move, had that push, and regularly, to me, that's how you get some of those solutions. You get a community effort, and it does work sometimes, but the reality is if someone remains in criminality, it might just be a matter of time. I think it's very disrespectful that those in authority not even addressing the nation. Yes, it is desensitization. Original Pie says, put a red flag at the spot of all past murders and people will realize how many have died. Wow. Original Papi, that might actually be a good idea. A good idea. In some of those communities, you don't even have to put a big flag. You put a small red flag by each murder. You probably can't go back too long in time, otherwise you might cover the entire community in red flags. Mark said she did not believe the violence was linked to anyone living in Scorpion Alley, but by people outside the area who were connected with it. It's not a perfect place. It have a little fighting, a little envy, but it's a different kind of love here. Mark said she fears for the lives of the young men that her own as everyone in the community knew her and would attend events hosted at her home. She said the young men supported and respected her, but I understand. In that world, everything is reprisal, but it's sad for everybody. When Newsday visited the area on Wednesday, a police vehicle was parked a few feet away from where the brothers George and Latren were shot dead in their home on Abbey Pujade Street. As the SUV left, another police patrol arrived a few minutes later. Mark said the police had been keeping a presence there since the double murder on Tuesday, the night after the local government election. Now, here's something I wonder about this. Since that double murder, since the last double murder in that region, they have arrested a man with an AR-15 that may have been one of the murder weapons. And since then, there have been no murders in the area, no subsequent murders. So here's my question. Because people from the area have been saying, good night, Andrew Teeths, good night, thank you. People from the area have been saying that they have basically said what caused the incident. Because I read on one of those, you know, there are lots of those crime pages, crime social media pages. Now, I read on one of those pages a report since the first double murder. The first double murder in that area was a couple, a young man and his girlfriend, who were murdered mere feet away from their home. And allegedly, the man who was murdered was not even involved in criminal activity, neither was the girl. Allegedly, he was a relation to another guy who may have been involved in some activities. And that guy was beefing with another guy, both of them in prison, allegedly. And that led to that murder. That news was out there since the first double murder. Here's why I say I wonder about the councillors and local government. If I know this, I live miles away from that region. I heard this since the first double murder. Do you think the councillor for that region, who is supposed to, in theory, live in the district, do you think the councillor for that region didn't know about that? About the reason behind these murders? And then, if you're the councillor for this region, you know who the families are, you know who is related to who, you know who is related to who, you know the politics of the area. Obviously, if you see that happen, you're going to know there are going to be reprisals. The lady from the community said it. She understands that in that life, everything is a reprisal. Obviously, there's going to be a reprisal. So you're trying to tell me, as the councillor for the region, this police presence in the region could not have been organized since the first double murders? And here's the thing, regularly you hear, because in this article also, the senior police officer in charge of the homicide division was talking about one of the difficulties they face is that it's difficult for the community to say what they see. Witnesses are afraid to come forward. And that's totally understandable. If I'm living in a community and on a given night, men could walk through with a rifle, walk into somebody's home and just kill two of them normal dress so. But I ain't see anything either. I am Stevie Wonder on this. I can understand that. It's obvious. But if you are the councillor, this is your job. This is your job. You don't have to take the same kind of negative feedback that a regular community member may have to take for talking about these issues. You are supposed to have an open line of communication with the police that service your district. Jackie Jones Carter says, having had the opportunity to live in some of these areas, there's really a great sense of love. Yeah. Listen, I currently live in an area that some may consider a bit of a hotspot, a bit of a hood in some quarters, and there's a love. I don't doubt it. There's a love and a unity in the ghetto. The ghetto is love. True. But there's hate too. And there's violence too. So it's true. For the councillors to collect corn, I am not talking about the councillors going as a witness on the stand for crime. I'm talking about the councillor for the region having an open line of communication with the police and saying, listen, we understand that once this double murder happens, we know the connections there. Officers, there's going to be an uptick in violence in our region. We're asking for a 24-hour patrol in our region for the next 5 months. Well, the officers might say, we can't take 5 months, but well, we take 3 months at least. Can those conversations happen? Is that something impossible? What is your job as the councillor? And as I said, I'm not talking about as a witness to crime here. I'm not talking as a witness to crime. As the councillor for the area, as I keep saying, an open line of communication. Obviously, all people in the area are supposed to know that you are always speaking with the police. You aren't sending the police to anyone's home. You aren't selling anyone out. You aren't snitching on anyone. All you are saying is, we know our community. We know that this isn't going to end there. Can we please have an increased police presence? And the reality is, there's an increased police presence now. It happened anyway. It just took 4 more people having to die. each community has a gatekeeper. Maybe the gatekeepers don't want the increased presence. That may very well be it. Why would the councillor do anything, to be honest? Because you don't want murders in your district, hopefully. These areas on youth are ploys because show me a ghetto youth that can bring in weapons. I can show you some Jackie Jones Carter. Now, here's the thing. I do believe that a lot of these young men are being used. They are tools. They don't even understand fully what they are involved in. I do agree with that. And oftentimes they are used by high-ups. I do agree with that. But I keep telling people, this idea we keep having that the ghetto youths and them so poor is only the 1% really, and that's not totally true. There are guys with their fishing boats with 225 engines attached to their boats that make their runs all on their own. There was allegedly a big man up in the caves. Anybody knows where the caves are in Spanish? What the caves are in Spanish? Up in the caves on the north coast. There was a big man there allegedly that for decades ran ships, ran fishing vessels in and out of the caves, servicing illegal contraband merchandise. Yes, deep thought. That guy. And allegedly, he was taken out allegedly by one of his inner circle, allegedly. And the one of his inner circle, allegedly, is currently leading his alleged group that was allegedly bringing in stuff in the caves. And then that one who allegedly killed him is now in prison, allegedly, still running that enterprise. No 1% involved. They didn't have to get a Syrian guy to do it. They have fishing vessels. They have the 225 engines. Have you ever seen some of those fishermen that fish for the goldfish? Some of those fishermen barely go out to fish and have a lot of goldfish, if you catch my drift. Accusations, false accusations, Trini Mike says. Hey, it might be false. It might be false, but those accusations are nonetheless there. Those accusations are nonetheless there. So the idea that a lot of people have that, is only the big boys. It's only the big boys, It's not them ghetto youth. The ghetto youth can't even do them thing, It's not the ghetto youth that doing them thing. Don't let them chain you up. Them ghetto youth can't bring in... What? You are being mistaken. Blessings from the island where $42 for a pack of wings. RL, always nice to see your greetings. Always nice to see your greetings. Also, killings increase when a leader is murdered, correct? Hey, I could manage that, man, with school reopening too. Hey, well, we have fishermen buying brand new cars cash. Well, yeah. The fisherman that was killed by the police, not too long ago was that, about 3 years ago, a fisherman was killed by the police in the lots near the sea, and allegedly he bought an expensive luxury SUV, cash, not cash, cash, walked in and dropped the cash on the table. So the idea that the ghetto youths can't do it is not totally true. Not totally true. Jaron VC says he was a hardworking man. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt he was a hardworking man. I make no imputations on the man's character or on the source of his wealth. I make no assumptions about such. I am just saying that the idea that the ghetto youths cannot afford to bring in anything, they don't have resources, they don't have the ability, is not true. It's provably false. Gorgeous Leslie says both ghetto youths and the 1% does it easy. That's true. On a real note though, I seriously wonder if we're heading towards being like Mexico. We were speaking about that recently. The prevalence of the gang violence in Trinidad is a scary thing, genuinely. It's a scary thing. Listen, it's a symbiotic relationship. Two hands clapping there. No doubt about that. No doubt about that, because there are obviously high ups involved. I don't doubt that. I'm not negating that. I'm just saying that don't take it for granted that, the ghetto youths can't do anything. Don't take that for granted. As I remember, a certain quote unquote ghetto youth leader who was allegedly involved in different kinds of activities in Central. He was known to own a place in One Woodbrook Place. Those are at least $1 million a pop, I heard. He drove around in a Jeep. That's not exactly a B14. You got to understand. I am yet to understand gang violence, Jerry says. I understand gang violence. Gang violence is simple. It's easy to understand. If you are in a business, remember a lot of these guys are running businesses. Ostensibly, it's a business they're running. It's an illegal business, but it's a business. They're aiming to sell a project and make money. Okay? Well, sell a product and make money. If you get transgressed upon while doing your illegal business, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's an illegal business. You can't call the police and say that a guy robbed me. You can't go to the court and get some kind of resolution on the matter. What are you going to do? Well, you have to figure out that resolution all on your own. So the gang violence is kind of easy to understand. And then when you have people doing these criminal enterprises, these criminal businesses, and they do it as a group, they do it as a tightly unified group, you get the group dynamics working inside of there. And some of those guys, remember, that's all they do all day, Some of those fellas are brethren from brethren land, You don't get closer than those guys because they don't do anything else all day than sit together and share the same weed. Listen, if for the last 10 years, all you and I do every single day is sit down on the same corner, sharing weed one after the other, we build a very close bond. So when a guy kills you, of course I'm hurt by that. So, gang activity isn't hard to understand really and truly to me. This country is too small for no one to know who is who. True. Michelle says socially, gangs feel the need for belonging to a social group. They provide protection and family. Yes, they do. Egos and greed cause gang violence more than drugs or anything. The violence maybe. That is love that us be talking about. Yeah, them fellas love each other, genuinely love each other. I wouldn't want to be the one to go and tell any gangster that there's a little kind of homoerotic business going on there. But sometimes there is. Like, bro, you spend too much time with men. Like, all your life is man. And the strange thing is some of those big boys don't even be with the men them so much. The big boys living with the girls in their nice house and you with man whole day every day. Alright. That's why statistically you find young men from single mother homes gravitate to gangs, lack of dad. Correct. And listen to this. As you said that, listen to this story. A worker slain while cutting grass. And this one is a guy was murdered in Arima around Cleaver Road somewhere there. A guy from La Hoqueta. Now, this guy was on social media. As I said, I follow a lot of those crime pages. And he was on social media starring on some of those crime pages weeks ago. He was linked allegedly with another murder in the La Hoqueta area. And the day after the murder, he went live and released a live video. And some people said, well, the guy seems to be taking credit for the murder. And then he released another video saying, no, he's not doing that. And then you saw another video with him with an AR-15 and etc. The guy seemed to be heading really fast to the end he was heading to. And surprise, surprise, he's murdered now. Surprise, surprise. Not really, but yeah. Relatives of the 21-year-old attempted to steer him away from making poor choices in his life. However, He refused to listen. His stubborn nature came to a head yesterday morning when gunmen fatally shot him on Pedro Alfonso Street off Cleaver Road in Arima. Prescott was a father of 2 children, his mother said. Now, as we go through the story and go through some of the facts of the story for this guy, bear in mind that now his 2 children are left fatherless too. The cycle continues. The cycle continues. Trini Mike says, imagine gunman have day job. Trini Mike, you'll hear the day job that he had, which to me adds an even greater layer on this. The day job that he did have. Clearly being a gunman doesn't pay enough. Well, obviously. That's the point I was making. How many of them sang that song? Chronics. Spanish tongue me born and grow. Holy for gunman me know. One thing me know for certain. The whole of them poor. It's true. And you don't to sing if I was you to sell my gun and buy a burning machine, burn off all the Chronic CDs and go and sell that and buy some clothes for your children. And I agree with Chronics. A lot of gunmen poor. You watch a lot of bad men, they're in the same rubber slippers for the last decade. Yes, a lot of them are poor, and we were talking about the dynamics of that before. It's true. A lot of these mothers become single mothers by force. Clearly being right. I used to work in a hotspot every morning, women and kids about to work, no men around. Sheesh. Sheesh. Yep. After work, all men on the block chilling and smoking. Yep. 2 of Prescott's... Wait, let's go on. We tried to warn him repeatedly, tried to steer him away from this life. But this is the result. He chose a life. We would warn him every day, every night. He had moments where he would say, oh gosh, and try to change. But he always seemed to fall back into the wrong circles. I don't know what would have led to this. I may never know. But I know it would have been the choices he would have made and the associates he would have had that led him to this path right here, said the mother. 2 of Prescott's older sisters, still no male in his life. Take note of that. Still no male in his life. 2 of Prescott's older sisters were also present at the scene of the killing, and they too called on young people to listen to their parents and to stay away from a life of crime. They called for more interventions from the state. There would be situations that parents are trying, but children are just not listening. I know that is hard to believe, but this is what happened here. My mother tried with him, but he didn't listen. So maybe there needs to be institutions that persons in such situations would have options to send their children to, like boarding school or boot camp or even a prison program, away from actual inmates and dangerous people. But they can see how bad prison can be and make a conscious decision that they want to stay away from this life. There needs to be some alternative, because it's too many young persons who have been killed over the years. The future of this country is at stake, one sister said. I agree with that sister, just by the way. I agree with that sister. What she's saying. Those programs are needed. She says there needs to be some kind of institution to help young men stay on the right path. I agree with her on, yes, the state could do some help some stuff. And there's Milat, and maybe some more of those youth camps need to come back, yes. But there is an institution. There is an institution to keep young men on the straight and narrow. It's called the family. The family is an institution. And a proper constituted family has a father. And there are differences in the male and female dynamics of discipline. That's a fact. You could try to deny that if you like, but the reality bears out that fact unflinchingly. You go into the prisons. You go into nearly anywhere in society where you see bad outcomes of bad choices in life. And one of the things you see primarily is young men, young women who lack fathers or father figures. We no longer have a village raising a child, Jacques Joan Carter says. It's not even just about the village. The village is lacking fathers. Even if there's a village, this young man obviously had people that cared about him. His mother was there. He had 2 older sisters that were there. That's at least 3 people that care about him. There were some people making up this village. But where were the men? Sports, they can also provide attractive incentives to attract youths. I agree, gorgeous Leslie. But there's something you'd notice. There's something you'd notice. There are lots of sportsmen who are also found in gang activity and murdered, you know. That's not something very strange. Regularly, when I read articles of murders, you see someone comment, yeah, he was a real good footballer. Yeah, he was a real good this. He used to run nationals, you know. It happens. The sports isn't the magic trick. Here's something you notice. Look at a lot of sportsmen who reach the top, and you know what you'd see a lot of times? Fathers. Let me see if I could think through the top 5 of sportsmen in the world right now. Messi, regularly you hear talk about his father. Neymar, regularly you hear talk about his father. LeBron is single mother. That's a unique one. Jordan, he was close with his father. Very close with his father. Those are stories you hear very regularly. Good fathers, even on the athletic side. That's what is needed. Still, it still doesn't negate it. There is no replacement for a properly constituted family. Serena and Venus, correct. The Williams sisters. You could go through all. You could just keep going. And I would wager the ratio might be something like 20 with good fathers to 1. LeBron, I believe LeBron was from a single mother whom, if I remember correctly. Nah, not if you have not if you have a father like Dwayne Wade. Jacques, even in that case, Jacques, the pushing of those Dwayne Wade issues did not come from the father. Dwayne Wade's youth. Dwayne Wade has big sons that grew up before he met his... Go see his big sons and see how they grew up. Go see his big sons. That's what I'd say. Even in that case. You see, again, properly constituted family. To me, the disciplinarian is supposed to be the male after a while. That's how it's supposed to be. Because women are more empathetic. And empathy isn't necessarily a good thing in training. If you are too empathetic, you could put yourself in everybody's shoe. Well, no. You probably shouldn't be there training people. You need somebody who could look at you crying and say, listen, those tears are temporary. You need to learn this lesson. You need somebody like that. You just do. And maybe society, as the big sister is saying here, maybe society could do some things that may, help to replace some of the fatherhood specialties. And it's true. I am not saying that single motherhood is a death sentence to the children. No, that's not true. There are many... you see, there are many single mothers who did it. They did the thing. But one of the things you notice with many of those single mothers who did it is they had to throw away a piece of their maternal instinct to be that hard mother in the case of discipline. Very regularly, that's what happens. It's not something that every mother can do. But I'm not saying that it's impossible for mothers. I'm just saying there is an institution that is engineered to do that very same thing. You want that discipline? There's an institution for that. You see what you're saying about Dwayne Wade? What you're really saying about Mr. Wade? Ricardo Bucas says fathers are the ones that control child aggression. The nuclear family was destroyed since the 60s. Yes, there has been a concerted effort to destroy the nuclear family. That's why certain things really upset me. Good night, Scafty. Good evening. There are certain things that really upset me, like in 2020 when this BLM craze was going through. And I saw black people all over the internet, all over social media, throwing up their BLM fists all over the place. Their BLM fists all over. Some people still have BLM on their status. And then I went to the BLM website, and I see the website says that they were crafted by trained Marxist lesbians, are the founders, and their aim is to dismantle the nuclear family. And I'm like, you're a black person. The community that struggles the most with fatherlessness. And you're backing an organization that says its mission is to dismantle the nuclear family? What? What? And I mean, there's a reason for that. They are Marxists. Just to brush on this quickly. They are Marxists, communists. They believe that the state could control all aspects of life. The state has that ability. But the problem that the Marxists have realized over 100 years now is that it's very difficult for the government to control everything when there's a nuclear family. It's very difficult for the government to control everything when there's a nuclear family. You see, the nuclear family is the base unit of governance. If you're a child, listen, I am 32 years old, and by and large, even up till now, if my parents tell me to do something that is different than what the government tells me to do, who do you think I listen to? That's families. So if you want to control every aspect of life, you need to dismantle the nuclear family. You need to dismantle the nuclear family. That's why Marxists always try to do that. They try to take your children away. They try to re-educate children. They try to tell women that promiscuity is a good thing, while it's not. Every study ever has shown that female promiscuity destroys societies, destroys the female themselves. But those Marxists push those things because their aim is to crumble that fabric of society that has the governing at the familiar level. Yeah, Willie Bang. Michelle says the nuclear family is the base of society. Without it, society will and is collapsing. Correct. It is, and it will, because you need that family. You look at communities that excel. I regularly quote US statistics because they are the ones that keep a lot of those statistics best. You look at communities that do the best. Look at it at ethnic levels. Look at the ethnic groups that perform the best in terms of monetarily, their assets. They're the ethnic groups that retain familial structure the greatest. The group, if you want to be wealthy, keep your family in shape. That's all. You want to be wealthy. You want to get generational wealth. Forget about the wealth part. Work on the generational part. You stay married to your wife. Keep your children in a good relationship and within your orbit. Train them to do the same thing when they reach that position. Train your grandchildren to do the same thing that when they reach that position. And without fail, by the time your generations reach down, if you can successfully do that, you will be wealthy. The ruler's tax base doubles when there are two employed in the home rather than one. Facts. Wide leather. Facts. Trin Moby says, true, Marx argued that the tribal family and the primitive way of living more generally was primitive communism. Women care for kids. If their morals are corrupt, the society will become corrupt, correct? Minorities are basically last because of that, you know. Correct, Willie Ben. I do know that. And I think that's true. I think in many cases that is why many minorities Alas, if you look at many communities that are struggling, go through the communities in Trinidad and Tobago that are struggling the most of them you'd see a breakdown in familial structure. And that's what I was talking about. That's what I was talking about when I was saying, even from the jump, that I think people shouldn't be living too close to each other. Because you see, when you pile people in too close, it's very difficult to get that individual family dynamics. I look at Sealats sometimes, and not to knock people who live Sealats, I understand situations are situations, circumstances are circumstances. Some people are just born into that. But I look at that. When your neighbor is a galvanized wall away from you, how do you manage your family? It's nearly impossible. There would always be input from some other person. It's difficult to get that nuclear family dynamic where this family is able to put their morality, their views into their children. Because from the time your children wake up and they come out of the one room that is your bedroom, living room, and kitchen, then bam, they're in the neighbor's yard. There are single people in marriages. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that it's a foolproof way. That's not what I am saying. I know there are marriages that don't go ideally. I know there's difficulty that happens and all of that. But you know, I read regularly, and annoyingly to me, it's regularly black women that post this. I read regularly people talk about, don't stay in them relationships. If you get so and so, leave. Don't let no man thing. And don't take. And then I look at billionaires. Bill Gates was the wealthiest man in the world for a significant period of time. Allegedly, he was cheating on his wife with an ex-girlfriend that he had all along for a long time, and allegedly his wife knew. Homeboy allegedly was flying on pedo planes, going to a pedo island, doing pedo business, and his wife allegedly knew. She stayed and divorced him after the children reached a certain age. Billionaires. She did divorce him, but she waited till the children were grown. And they are billionaires. People who are barely hundredaires are out there saying, me taking nothing from nobody, and if he only do so and so, he said, leave him. Okay. If you don't want to take it, you don't have to take it. I'm not telling you what to take and don't take. But look at the results. Nisi says, I mean, you can't be broken horn in minute. Oh, God, no. Hey. I not gaining that. I not gaining that. I not gaining that one, Nisi. Because I don't know. But the reality is, a broke father on the scene is oftentimes better than the same broke father out of the scene. But won't it be better if men don't do anything for women to want to live? Yes. Bali 100%. I'm glad you said that. I am broken out on service. I am not by any means endorsing bad behavior by men. I regularly talk about this. That might be what I talk about even more frequently than on the women's side. I regularly talk about it when these especially again black men, and it annoys me that it's the black community that seems like they could least afford to do some of this, and regularly they're the ones that tout some of this behavior. Some of these black men that are talking about going back to the old African ways and polygamy. If you align enough of my lives, I always talk about that. That is nonsense. It does not work. It doesn't help the community in the long run. The idea that, if you're a high level, high status man, if you're high status, you're up there, you could afford to do that. Well, yes, you can afford to do that. Yes, you will get women who are willing to take it from you. Yes, but your children will not benefit for it. And what's the value of your life if your children fail after you die? In different countries, marriage concepts are different from region to region. That's true, they are different from region to region. But in all countries, facts remain the same, Scafty. Facts remain the same in all regions. And there are biological realities and sociological realities that are unchanging in all regions. So even in regions that accept polygamy, it does not benefit their society in that way. It doesn't. Now, if you're talking about compared to what? Maybe in some regions, they think it would make more sense that 5 women share one husband than one woman gets the husband and the other 4 stay without. Maybe, who knows? But in the long run, polygamy is inferior to monogamy, without fail. It could be said by some that one of the differences between Europe and Africa was the difference between polygamy and monogamy. Enforced monogamy and polygamy, and accepted polygamy. It could be said by some that that's one of the differences why Africa had a different level of progress than Europe. Africa had to restart their progress every couple generations, because the polygamy would mess it up and they would have to restart it every couple generations. And then you hear some of those European bloodlines, they so overdo the thing that they inbred till they ran out. And there are some European bloodlines that could still trace themselves back through sanctioned marriages back to Charlemagne, who was the first leader of the Holy Roman Empire, which was basically a big chunk of Europe. There are still some who could do that. And then you're surprised when the African kings who had 300 children with 100 wives, the outcome of their family is different than the European kings that tried their best to stay with the one wife, and yes, they had their concubines, and I'm not negating that. I'm not saying the Europeans were better. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the outcomes here. And watch the end result. Watch the end result. That was introduced to care for women and children during times of war when men died. Yes, in terms of practicality, polygamy is practical, especially in more older civilizations, more older communities, where men are obviously the disposable gender. Yes, they did, but that's why I said enforced monogamy. The accepted cultural standard was monogamy. The wisest advice KCR gave: women, choose your men wisely. Agreed. Thus, to achieve communism, they aim to restructure society to create a wide-reaching neo-tribal family, i.e. the state. Correct? But you can't make the state into a family when the people aren't together like that. It doesn't work. So yes, that polygamy business, I to say it on the men's side, I say it. That doesn't work. And mistreating your wife, wanting her, making her want to leave you, is not a benefit to the family. Mistreating your family isn't a benefit. There might be more factors that the Europeans did too. Yes, police peanut punch. I do not deny that by any means. I am not saying monogamy and polygamy is the difference between Europe and Africa. By no means, because there are many differences. Europe didn't have as much deadly pests. One of the difficulties in Central Africa, where there are lots of nice minerals and lots of resources that are very valuable, is that there are lots of mosquitoes. So for a very long time, people couldn't really inhabit that area very easily. There are lots of malaria-carrying mosquitoes, etc., etc. So yes, there are other factors. I don't deny that. Now I'm feeling for peanut punch. There are other factors. I'm not denying that. Trini Hotep. That is factual, you know. The mosquitoes in... Go research that. Go research that. The mosquitoes in Central Africa that carry malaria was one of the biggest deterrents to the Europeans going inland. And that's one of the reasons why many of the Europeans bought slaves from the coastal Africans. You'd think those Europeans were venturing inland to go and try and capture slaves like that. They couldn't do that. They weren't able to do that. Another reason, another thing with Africa, when the Europeans came to Africa, they watched the mud huts that the Africans were living in, and they looked down on the mud huts. Ha ha ha. They didn't understand good technology. And then those Europeans settled in that place for a little while. And you know what they built? Mud huts with thatched roofs also, because the temperature and climate was such that that was the best thing to keep cool. So there were other factors. They tried though. Yes, they did try. Mosquitoes is a great deterrent even to me now. Yes, and the tsetse fly. The tsetse fly, to me, I think up until like 10 years ago, I haven't looked at it for a while now, but up until like 10 years ago, the tsetse fly was the number one animal killer in Africa, wasn't it? Up till not too long ago, a fly looks nearly like a house fly, and it kills. So, and I mean, a flying insect this small isn't exactly something that it's easy to get rid of. And a lot of people think back in time with the modern context, thinking that people had nice houses with... You all ever see the, we don't go down that but fly larvae part. I don't even want to talk about that. Nice concrete houses with sealed glass windows and galvanized roofs and a ceiling on the outside of their roof and a ceiling on the inside, and they could keep the flies. And no. That's not how it went. That's not how it went. So there were other difficulties. I agree. Let's jump into another article dealing with this similar crime and criminality issue. Estate police want automatic guns for carrying cash in transit. Estate Police Association, Derek Richardson, is suggesting security guards should be allowed to use automatic weapons when they have to do cash in transit operations. Whew. Here's the thing though. I don't agree with that. And I think, I am not saying I am any gunman expert here, but I think he kind of misunderstands language in guns there. Maybe what he's talking about is a rifle. But even the US military, generally speaking, does not issue automatic weapons to their regular soldiers. Why? Because an automatic weapon stands a very high chance of collateral damage. So maybe what he means is a semi-automatic rifle. That might be what he means. I hope it's not really an automatic there. Because if bandits come to rob you at an ATM, ASP Joanna Archie say hire police when making large withdrawals. I wonder if she also owns a security company. I wouldn't doubt it. A lot of police own security companies or have interest in security companies. Nearly every security company is staffed, the middle management, at least the middle management is staffed by a lot of police. Nearly every security company. If you're familiar with them, you'll know that. Many of them, because you see, if you have a police officer there, especially a senior police officer, you have a guard with a gun already. But then a police get robbed dropping off money the other day, yes. But Sabga owns the most illustrious one, correct. So, if bandits run up, so he was talking about this incident in Marabella on Tuesday, where he was speaking about an incident with a guy. Here's the Augustine 46 of Telecom Security Services. Augustine and 3 colleagues were depositing cash at an RBC ATM at DS Plaza, Chin Chin Road in Kunupie at around 11:30 a.m. on August 17th when 5 gunmen, some with high-powered weapons, ambushed them. Augustine struggled with one of them, who shot him. The men escaped. Here's my question. 11:30 at an ATM at a plaza, 5 men come to rob you. You're going to open up the matic? Really? You going to what? Crack the matic from the hip and just beat them down? You cannot do that. You that's not going to work. You are going to kill a lot of people. There are lots of people around there that are going to die. To tell you all the truth, anytime I see one of those vans coming to pick up or drop off money, I trying to get scarce. I don't even want to be around. They can do it. I've seen scams. And here's the other thing. In this situation here, they had guns and they didn't get off a shot. If they had automatic guns, what was going to be the difference? Because they had guns and it's not like they got off shots anyway. To me, that's a training issue, really and truly. When them amalgamated trucks pull up, I bust out one time. Me too. When Bigfoot and Goliath and you know all those guys, when they pull up, I pull out. I am out. You see, worse yet in the bank, because in my mind, I know if some fellas come in to try to take that risk, they come in bull. I prefer not. I don't want to see. I don't want to be around. And they're talking about automatic weapons. So I just don't think that automatic weapons would be the solution that you're looking for here. That's my personal opinion on this. But they're going to request it from the commissioner and ask the commissioner to speak to the Minister of National Security, etc., etc. So we'll see how that goes. And he was speaking about also the fact that they sometimes have inferior vests and armor. Now, the reality is that a lot of these criminals now are moving with high-powered rifles. And a lot of those regular vests aren't going to stop high-powered rifle rounds anyway. So, Willie Bang says this country going through these things because people don't demand better. Okay. What should the people demand then in that case? I see also the Bankers Association is offering a $10,000 reward to figure out what is going on. A $10,000 reward to find out who is robbing their customers. Well, they just got to get their improved protection. Give them Batman level Kevlar. So I will see how that all goes with the banks, if that $10,000 reward would actually, inveigle anyone to come forward, but I doubt it, because everyone is afraid to be unemployed and miss out of that $1,750. Many of them don't make that $1,750. Rather than automatic. Oh, please, we all know what's going on, that's for sure. Yep. Why are workers allowed to work with their phones? You'd have to ask the bank. Personally, I think that $10,000 reward is an insult. People who were robbed of numerous times more than the $10,000. And to me, you don't need the public to give you information to figure that out. You need to give the public information to figure that out. You would have the cameras on the inside of the bank. You would be able to see which workers shot a call, which worker had a convenient break they took in between the time. That's something for you to investigate. I find it's kind of, it seems a bit insulting and like they're trying to, throw the blame in another direction by, going out to the public and we're offering a $10,000 reward for information on this, while the information on this is for you to collect. Tellers not allowed their phones on duty, but they can send the same communication with their Apple Watch. Fact. Fact. All right, people. Banks could find 1 cent missing in an account. They can't find a mole. They don't want to find that mole. Remember Sentinel Money Heist? Yes, I remember Sentinel Money Heist. It should have pictures or cameras over all registers and no outside communications. As I said, I think if the bank really and truly wanted to fix that, it wouldn't have been an exactly very difficult thing to fix. Really and truly. I just don't think so. I don't buy that one. It seems very convenient to me, that whole thing. A convenient thing. Let's dive back into some of this Caribbean Airlines business, because we were talking about Caribbean Airlines would obviously be losing money. We were saying that yesterday, but they came out with some figures here. Carl, counting millions in losses, apologizes to passengers, blames pilots for disruption. Caribbean Airlines lost an estimated $15 million during the 2-day flight disruption of its operations over the weekend, according to sources within the airline. While the final costs are still being tabulated, from chartering aircraft compensation to providing accommodation and meals for stranded passengers in TNT and the region to the legal cost of seeking an injunction against its union, the reputational damage to the airline cannot be quantified. The airline said it's a shame that 60 domestic and international flights had to be cancelled during a busy travel period. In a statement yesterday evening, the airline apologized to the thousands of passengers stranded throughout the Caribbean and TNT and put the blame on its pilots. Carl said the disruptions were caused by a high volume of sick calls, 93 from pilots, prior to them having to report for duty for their respective flights. Carl noted that it was granted an injunction from the industrial court against the Trinidad and Tobago Airline Pilots Association to bring a stop to the disruption early yesterday morning. TTALPA was instructed to direct their workers or employees to immediately report to duty following the injunction. TTALP chairman Mark Moore told Guardian Media that, as instructed by the court, he sent out a communique and ordered all members to report to duty once they are medically fit. What's the consequence, though? Willie Beng says, I rate them workers highly, should strike longer, all kind of thing. What's the consequence, though? Because, according to the laws, they aren't supposed to be able to do that. They are not supposed to be able to legally strike. So, what's the consequence? Just, okay, they got through with the strike, they got what they wanted done, and oops, now go back to work. Why say it's illegal then? Tell them, well, it's not illegal, but you could only do it for a short period of time, because that's what it seems like to me, if there's no consequence. Carl said it was saddened by the developments. Carl said it rests. No, let's forget that for now. Let's go into more of this. Young knocks pilots over disruption. Meanwhile, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Stuart Young, yesterday condemned the actions by the pilots. Speaking at the opening ceremony for something in his community, he said a literal handful of individuals who thought that was the way to treat citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. You must understand, with an airline, we have a wide customer net of international travelers, as well well as when you trace that back, it is all about entitlement. There is a limited pot, that's the treasury, and there are so many persons that have to be looked after, the vulnerable, the aged. He reflected on the fact that government had to use taxpayers' money to keep Cal afloat during the years of the pandemic. However, he said as difficult as it was for the government, the money was pumped into Cal because we believed as a policy we should keep a national airline going. Citizens, let us not fall into those traps because we must always think of the others in our society and not only see what is in front of us right here. Here are some figures. Here are some figures. In this 2023 budget presentation, Finance Minister Colin Burt had identified Cal as a better recipient of government subsidy. He said then, subsidy of Caribbean Airlines to keep the airline flying to maintain our connectivity with the rest of the world at a cost of $700 million per year. $700 million per year. And let me see if I could find this number. There's a number here. That's not the one. Guardian Media was told, listen to this, Guardian Media was told that pilot salaries account for 70% of the cost of running Cal, while they comprise 5% of the total staff. So, understand this. When the country pays $700 million per year to Caribbean Airlines, a significant chunk of that. Wait, that math's not mathsing? Yeah, it is. Out of the 100% of the money they get, pilot salary is 70%. Although pilots altogether only make up 5% of the staff, which means the other 95% of the staff must share up the remaining 30% of the money. How many pilots? I believe they had the number there, 93 out of how many pilots? Let me see if I could get that number. If I could get that 93 number out of how many pilots. No, it's not in this one. I believe some one of these articles give a total number of pilots. I can't seem to find it. I can't seem to find that number. So I don't know how many total pilots there are, but they make up 5% of the staff according to the Guardian here. Michelle says a pilot's salary is approximately $30,000 fair market value. Okay. No, Michelle. The $700 million that I was talking about was the additional subsidies that the government pays into Cal. Now, here's the interesting part when I hear things like that. $30,000 is fair market value. Okay, it might be. But is it fair market value if the airline is making no money? And it's very interesting to me when people talk about fair. How is $30,000 fair for the pilots, but how much do you pay the gardener when he comes to work for you? How come the pilot deserves $30,000, but your gardener, you pay him $200 a day? What's that? What's that? Where's the fairness there? What do they deserve? And bear in mind, So if we need 300K for pilot salaries, what is the total cost for all salaries? Well, it is possible to work it out. You work out CALs. If you get Caribbean Airlines full running cost for the year, you work that out and get 70% of that, and you'd get how much is the total cost of pilot salaries. Would you feel safe flying with a disgruntled pilot? And it's so much easier to pay the pilot. What do you mean it's so much easier to pay the pilot than regular day workers? You see, that's my problem. That's my problem. How could a whole range of people be paid by the state, and one person is paid $30,000 and they say that's fair, and then another person is paid $3,000 and that's fair too? I don't know what math you're working out there, Michelle, because they didn't say the number of pilots. They didn't say how much money each pilot makes. And there are different levels of pilots too. So there are different levels there are different levels that make different levels of money. Ronnie says, my gardener didn't pay $500,000 to learn to do my bush. So, okay. The salary is based on how much you pay to learn it. So if I pay $1 million and go over to Australia and spend time with Aborigines learning how to speak their language, and I come back to Trinidad, should the state pay me $60,000 a month because I paid a lot to learn what I learned? Or is it based on the profitability of my skill? What's the profitability of the pilot's skill? In this case, there's no profitability for the business. If the job is based on skill that is difficult, yes, it should pay highly. Yes, should. Management just the problem. It's not the pilot fault for profitability. So whose fault is it for profitability, familiar stranger? Because according to what is being said here, 70% of the expenditure of Caribbean Airlines is pilot salaries. So whose fault is it? And from what I heard, this is what I heard. What I heard is that the proposal was to decrease their hours, to decrease each one's hours, so then you would decrease their pay. Your energy speaking from a business perspective, I agree. A pilot slash captain of an aircraft has lots of responsibilities, not just flying a plane. That's true. The doctors are paid $30,000 a month and they only see 4 patients for the day. So 70% of expenditures. Where are you getting this 300,000 number from though? Who told you it's $300,000? Where are you getting that? And yeah, the senior doctors might make that 30. 100 pilots being paid $30,000 a month. I don't know if they only have 100 pilots. I don't know if that's the number. And I don't know that all of the pilots' salaries are $30,000. So, I don't know. And 100 by 30,000 would be 3 million, not 300,000, just by the way. If it is 100 pilots at $30,000, so it would be 3 million. All profession is important, so should be paid fairly. What is fair? That is my entire question. That's the kind of point that Stuart Young was making also. He was saying that there's one government pot. There's one government pot that everybody has to be paid out of. Everybody in all those state enterprises. How do you determine that your fair salary should be $30,000 while the government is struggling to pay police $8,000? What's the fairness there? How do you determine that? And the idea that the cost of your education should determine the cost of your the level of your salary is idiotic. That makes zero sense. The cost you pay for your education has nothing to do with how much salary you should make. The potential salary you should make should determine what you pay for your education. That's where the relation is, not vice versa. You see, when you close down blasted Petrotrin, they must struggle. But Petrotrin was doing the same thing as Caribbean Airlines. They were losing more money. So if we kept Petrotrin open, we'd have been doing the same thing like Caribbean Airlines, paying pilots even more. Ronnie says, if Cal is not making money, then no one should have a raise. It will be better to sell Cal to private. And that's the thing. To be honest, a state-owned airline fleet is really expensive to run. That's true. They'll make it profitable. Cal has been running on a loss for decades, correct? Where are we getting money? Taxing citizens to death. Where are the investments? Yes. They are getting the most on top of the subsidiary, 252 pilots from an old article 2021. 252. Oh yes, I remember which article I saw with that. There was an article that had the number 300 and something. That was 2019, so probably it dropped. They was thieving the money. Yes, they were. And they probably are at Caribbean Airlines too. I remember there was a joint select committee where there was talk about serious impropriety in the money inside of Caribbean Airlines. 700,000 and 100,000 disappearing. Yes, that happens. But what do you do about that? If we want to solve that, then as Ronnie says, we need to privatize. We all up in pilots' payslips with magnifying glasses, but blind to the monthly rental leases to ministers. Wide leather, you cannot be speaking to me. You literally cannot be speaking to me on that wide leather, because a running theme of things I say when I talk about government spending is the government needs money to pay Mr. Al-Rawi for his building. I say that probably every other live, so you cannot be talking to me. I am an equal opportunity negator on government spending. So why the jail, the workers have to pay? We have a brain drain going on. Well, here's the thing, Michelle. Here's the thing. If Petrotrin is open, being run as a state company, and the state is using it, people inside of the state are using it to steal money, what should we do? We cannot stop the people from stealing the money. It's not working. We've been trying. There's nothing we could do to stop the people from stealing the money. And the money comes from the country wider. Should we continue stripping the country of resources to keep paying pilots or the people from Petrotrin? Is that what we should do? Privatizing Cal will make it so expensive, but will solve all issues. Yeah, but that's the thing. If people have this, it's a curse in the Caribbean. This remnant of colonialism where we believe that politicians have to take care of everything we do. No, kill the middle class and take us to 80s era Guyana. No! What would happen? This is what I'm saying. Y'all seem not to understand. The reason the government is trying to implement those property taxes is because they aren't making enough money. The reason they aren't making enough money is because they are spending too much money. What are they spending the money on? Okay, they are stealing some of it. Yes, we cannot stop that. And they are spending some on those state enterprises. And each state enterprise is another opportunity to steal. So here's what. Let everyone pay for their own thing. And don't tell us the government is going to help us, because they aren't helping us. Maybe what we need is the government to sell Caribbean Airlines to a private owner, and let that private owner fire 3/4 of the pilots, keep only the most useful ones, and actually get the thing running efficiently. But no. We don't want that. We want to keep all of the pilots and pay them their full salaries and keep the company running at a bus. Where does the money come from? My taxpayers' money. So you must keep your salary and my taxes must go up. How is that fair to me? They're stealing real money via private system too. What are you talking about? What money? Whose money are they stealing via the private system? Whose money are they stealing? How are they stealing money via the private system? Willie Bang, how about they stop mismanaging these companies? Okay, how about Santa Claus comes and slides down my chimney and gives me a Benz? It's the same likeliness. So, what do you want? Let's keep wishing that some successive government is going to come in here with the moral upstanding nature to stop the mismanagement, to stop the, I have no chimney, that's what I'm saying, Trini Hotep, to stop the mismanagement and honestly run these companies. That's what we're waiting on. And in the meantime, while we wait on that one savior of a politician, we're going to keep losing money to the companies each year. Taxpayers' money going to political financier businesses who provide private service to help fill gaps in public systems. Fill gaps like what? And the reason that could happen is because it is a public system. If there is no public system, there is no gap to fill. If there is no public system, there's no need for the government to have the money to pay anybody to do anything. And here's the thing that some people seem not to understand when they worry about, well, you know, if they sell Caribbean Airlines, you know who go and take it over? The Sabgas and them. The Sabgas will buy Caribbean Airlines and they're going to make real money. Well, listen to this. Listen to how you're not thinking clearly. According to the Auditor General's 2021 report, the government has acted as a guarantor of 4 loans for Caribbean Airlines. A US $75 million loan, $504 million loan from First Citizens Bank. That's one loan from First Citizens Bank. Now, bear in mind, when you loan from the bank, you pay them back with interest. So they make money off of you. So First Citizens Bank is making money off of Caribbean Airlines because government owns it and is mismanaging it. And they're paying all of these people exorbitantly. That's what's happening. But that's not the only loan. And anybody who's a private investor from the IPO of First Citizens, I don't know how many of you remember that IPO of First Citizens, the bacchanal that went on there, and who were the feeders? Well, they're making money off of Caribbean Airlines. Yes, they are, Derek. One $504 million loan from First Citizens, another $436 million loan from First Citizens. Now you could say the government is part owner of First Citizens. So you know the government is part owner, so maybe the loan from the bank from First Citizens isn't the worst thing. But listen to this. A $436 million loan from Answer Merchant Bank. And another $443 million loan from Answer Merchant Bank. You all know who owns Answer, right? So, while we're here fighting, we want the government to own it because we want the people to keep making money. How you go through the poor people on the breadline, you know? The poor people out, they need money. And if you sell it, them 1% owners will take it over and they will leave nothing for the poor people in the country. And in the meantime, by allowing it to stay state-owned, the state is taking loan after loan after loan from those same 2%, those same 1%, sorry, that same 1%, and paying back interest with your money. So wouldn't it have made more sense to sell the thing to the people, let them make their profit off of Caribbean Airlines where they can, and let's not just keep paying them back interest on loans that we're borrowing because of mismanagement? How does that make sense? RL says, and I'm sure that loan is in US dollars and airline needs foreign currency to operate. Very likely. So the 6 for 9, we keep being sold at 6 for 9. Yeah, the government had a fine work for we. The government had a fine work for we, you know. The government had a fine work for we. And we don't want no privatizing in the place. If the government privatize the place, then, you know, we ain't gonna get no work for the poor people. And you continue down this road, you stay as a wage slave to the state, and the state keeps borrowing money and taking back that money behind your back and sending it up the line. And Mashipu, that's beyond mismanagement. Yes, it is. Crime depressing entrepreneurs. Fact. Fact. But you know, in Trinidad and Tobago, if everybody have a government work, then who need entrepreneurship? You know, government work will do it. Lol, could they absorb the loan if they buy it? Very likely what would happen if they buy it is that the cost that they would pay might be minused from that loan. So I believe I was watching a deal, George Soros. I don't know how many of you know that name, a very popular name these days. He bought some, was it Vice? I think George Soros recently bought, I think it could be Vice if I'm remembering correctly. And how he bought it was he gave them loans over time. He kept giving them loans and loans and loans, and eventually he bought it for like $1 or something like that because they owed him so much. Customs charges killing businesses. And again, all of those things, the custom charges killing businesses, the crime killing entrepreneurship, that's not as big an issue when everybody is a government worker. Nobody cares when everybody is a government worker. We don't have enough people to be worried about customs because everybody is a government worker. You don't care about customs. You don't care about the 7% increase on those taxes because you're good with the PNM encouraging you to go get a public sector job. Don't worry to start and do something yourself. The government is going to control this economy and put you into the right place. We will tell you what to do properly. We will. And you're happy with this. Or, better yet, let people take care of things on their own. They want employees to take the hit, but they get raises, perks, etc. Let them eat bread. It's cake. But I agree, you know. I agree. And I have this view. And this is on the Caribbean Airlines topic also. I think Caribbean Airlines, we need to evaluate how much their chairman is paid. How much their board is paid. We need to evaluate that. And to me, if the chairman is paid more than the pilot, then the pilots have a good reason to complain. Because the chairman is also employed by the state. He's also paid by the state. So it's all according to what the salaries are of everyone there. And that's kind of the issue I always have. I always say this. It's very difficult for someone to say what's the fair salary for a public servant in a company that makes no money. How do you deal with that? Derek says corruption is the major reason for all of this. Yes, it is. But corruption is a default of human nature. We are not going to evaporate corruption from the country. The best way to deal with corruption is do not give other humans too much power over other humans. That's what you do by empowering the state. You're giving humans power over other humans. We need better recruitment when it comes to management. And how are you going to get that, Tony the Ambassador, when the management is basically a political appointment? The board is basically a political appointment. Article from 2018, Carl's CEO salary was $71,000 per month. I figured that. I figured it would have been very high. And again, like, how do you pay the board of a failing company, state-owned, so exorbitant? That does not make sense to me. I understand the ideas. Like, okay, you want to attract the best CEO, so you offer a certain salary. I understand the idea, but the company is failing anyhow. That's why they strike, Michelle said. I could understand why they strike, you know. I was talking about one, the legality of their strike, two, the consequences of their strike, three, the efficacy of their strike, if it's going to work, and what's the solution? So they're striking to not drop their money or to get an increase. How is that going to work? Does the government now need to pump more money into Caribbean Airlines? He owns Nutrimix. 71K is chump change for him. Okay, well, if 71 is chump change, well, give him none. No, reevaluate managers' salaries. I could agree with that, Michelle. I would agree with that. But bear in mind, according to the information they gave there, 70% of Carl's expenditure anyway is pilot salary. So even if you tweak management's salary, you see, there is a reality where management, even if they get exorbitant salaries, there isn't a massive number of them. So even if you tweak it, that may not cause Carl to be profitable either way. Listra says, let them cut their profit margin. I believe it's a lie. They are operating at a loss. Really? You think it's a lie that Carl is operating at a loss? I do not think that's a lie at all. Knowing what I know of the inner workings of many government companies, that's not a lie at all. Please give people guns. Please sell Carl. Please stop customs from digging out my eyes. I agree with all of those. Solidarity can go a long way in taming the masses. But you see, Michelle, solidarity can go a long way in taming the masses. So, when the scrap iron dealers were given a raw deal, did the pilots protest with them? The solidarity you speak of. And this is what I understand the pilot's point, and I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know if I agree with it, but I understand. What I don't like, and I don't understand, I refuse to understand, is the way so many people seem to be very understanding of the pilot's point, and they're willing to give them solidarity, and many of those people were cussing the scrap iron men when the scrap iron men were attempting to get the same thing. R. McDonald says one person running TSTT for over 100,000 and 30,000 is too much. You see, this is the problem I have. When people, and these are state-run companies, when people are looking at these state-run companies, they're looking at the high-paid ones, and they're saying, well, I deserve to get up there too. Not looking that there are people making 4,000 a month. So, what should we do, R. McDonald? Should the $30,000 person go up to the 100,000, or should the $4,500 person raise a little bit? Who should get the raise? How come you understand it for the $30,000 person, but it's not understandable for the lower levels? And the scrap iron men have a very good point, because there's some information coming out now that seems to show that the scrap iron men may be innocent of some of the accusations, and it shows you where the real focus is for some of these things, where the real problems exist with some of these issues. Let's look at an article with this, an article briefly. Scrap iron dealers call for update on probe. Police investigate copper in containers. If you privatize, how are the middle or lower class going to survive with the inevitable increase in plane costs? Well, in cost of living, poverty line will raise, people will forfeit mortgages. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't believe if we privatize, there's going to be a super increase in the cost of living. What about privatizing will increase the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago? You could type that one out. Type out the cost of living, how it's going to increase if we privatize things. Because I could tell you, nearly everything that's essential in Trinidad and Tobago for you to live is already private. So what's going to increase with the privatization? Where's this increase going to happen? And R. McDonald say 30k raise is a little bit more. You see, that's the unfairness. That's the unfairness of the system. I can't agree with that. You see, and I always say this, in a private system that makes perfect sense. If you provide a job, If you provide a job and people pay you for the service that you provide, they pay you what they think you deserve, I have no business questioning your money. That's not my business. But if you're in the public, how could you justify for me that the 30,000 man must get a higher increase than the 4,500 man? How does that make sense? How does that make sense with the public's purse, all of our money? Critics argue private firms can exploit their monopoly power and ignore wider social costs. I agree. That's why monopolies, is a horrible thing for privates. But bear in mind, the state has a monopoly and they do the same thing. All right. So with government assistance, healthcare is different. Here's the thing for me. Do you know the government can still assist in private healthcare? The same money that very likely, here's the truth, very likely what it costs the government for you to get what was the one you used, radiation treatment, very likely what it costs the government, because it still costs the government something when you get radiation in public. Whatever the price it is, it costs the government is very likely higher than 150,000. Well, R. McDonald, you were part of the reason Petrotrin had to close. Michelle, are you sure you know the price that it costs the government for all of those things? Because in nearly everything, the government cost is higher. Now, healthcare is a unique scenario. I will admit that, and we have spoken before about healthcare and privatization at length. Healthcare is a unique scenario, but I still believe privatizing healthcare may actually be beneficial. If you look at this, Trinidad and Tobago has free public healthcare, and lots of Trinidadians still, with the free public healthcare, choose to go private. Private healthcare industry in Trinidad and Tobago is booming. Every corner you look, you see a new private hospital, a new private healthcare center. Michelle says the government spends more money in rent than if they build buildings. I agree, they do. So that's why we don't want the government to rent any buildings. We don't want the government to have to rent buildings. Because that's what the government does. That you are saying my point. You are saying my point. The government does these things with the money. So if the government doesn't have that responsibility, then they don't have that excuse. The reason the government has to rent a building from Tom, Dick, and Harry and Rawi, the reason that has to happen is because the government has a million little services that they all need an office for, you know. But if the government does not have all those million little services, how many buildings would they need to rent? That's what I mean about the holistic cost that you get from the government running these things. That's my point, Michelle. You are making my point. You think they don't know this? They can do it. They just don't want to. Yes, I agree. They can do it. They don't want to. So we don't leave them with the responsibility. That is the point. Yes, Michelle, the kickbacks on the end are costing us. And if they didn't have that responsibility, they couldn't give the kickback. If the government didn't have to build a next hospital, the contractor couldn't get a kickback. If the government didn't have to pave a next road, the contractor couldn't get a kickback. If the government didn't have to do X, there is no kickback that can be gotten. That's why people want to decrease government spending. And it's like pulling here, because every corner you look, everybody wants more things from the government, not understanding that's the trick. They trick you with it. They trick you. Oh, you want more things from us? Give us more power. Now, if you give us more power, we're going to give you milk and pampers for your baby. Look, milk and pampers for your baby. Oh, you almost got it. More power for us first. More power. Oh, you're giving us more power. Oh, look at milk and pampers for your baby. And you keep giving away power of your life. The government need to decentralize the services, but the eater food syndrome killing us, yes. Because hospitals don't function properly, just rewrite rules and functions and get it running, right? Every dollar spent by the government, 50 cents is corruption, correct? When talking about services, people will charge more for basic services if privatized. But the holistic cost would be less for the country. The holistic cost will be less for the country. The service would increase. The efficiency would increase. All of that would be better. All. The rent is because they choose to rent. Manning built the towers to reduce renting, but presently, yes. It's not the contractors who get the kickback, it's the government. Well, yes, the contractors give the government the kickback, but the contractors need to be paid an exorbitant fee in order to be giving the government the kickback. So, yeah. With that, they fail to work on things that they should actually be tackling, like crime. Exactly. Oh, Darius, how the pattern going, bro? They chose to rent. Yes, I agree. They chose to rent. I do agree. They did. That's kind of my point. We are the chickens of Joseph Stalin. So, more disposable income. Listen to this from the scrap iron dealers. In case you're taking the pilot side, listen to the scrap iron dealers. So next time the scrap iron dealers are pouring sand on the highway at Claxtonby, go join them. The Trinidad and Tobago Scrap Iron Dealers has called on Commissioner of Police Erla Harewood Christopher to provide an update on the investigation into allegations that containers containing copper for export were discovered at the nation's ports, noting that August 15th made it 1 year since the government imposed a ban on the exporting of copper. TTSIDA President Alan Ferguson said during that time investigations were conducted and claims were made that containers both at the port of Port of Spain and the Point Lisas port were discovered with copper ready for export. I just want Trinidad and Tobago to know a year has passed and no one has been charged. Ferguson said during a video recorded press statement issued by TT Cider yesterday. He added, and the reason we're saying this is that a lot of people from outside of Trinidad is coming in to do business in reference to scrap. Sometimes when they come here, they open up yards. We ourselves want to find out where they're getting license from to be able to open up scrap yards. And when they open scrap yards, copper, manhole cover, and whatever come that they're not supposed to buy, they're buying it. And it's causing a challenge for us and the association. I remember making this point back then. That they are scapegoating some of these scrap iron dealers. They are pointing us down at the bottom, trying to get everyone angry with the guys who may have been former prisoners. They're struggling to get a job. They're being paid next to minimum wage, picking up dirty scrap iron all over the place. They're scapegoating them. While the easiest way to stop that copper problem was check the ports. It was always the way to solve it. The guys stealing copper from the lines were not stealing it to go and make copper bracelets to sell. They were selling it to export. To export, it leaves the port. And a lot of people jumped up angry with those scrap iron dealers. Vexed when they were blocking the road. Vexed when they were raising their voices because they poor and dirty. But a year on, and the real culprits of it have yet to face consequence while the scrap iron dealers suffer. But the pilots deserve a raise. And the pilots deserve our solidarity. So, is it that we have weak-minded leaders who can't reason and solve problems? No. I don't believe that one bit. I do not believe that. I don't think that these leaders are too dumb to know. That's not the reason. They're not too dumb. Not at all. Intelligence isn't what is lacking from their ability there. They don't want to. That's what's going on. They just don't want to. Triniview says, I rather live with the free broken health system than the expensive one that works that I can't afford. The reality is, Triniview, if there was that private healthcare system, very likely there would be insurance to cover that. It's not like when you have to go to the hospital, you'd have to jump out with cash from your pocket, unless like you're a drug dealer or something and you're outside of the system. You would be paying insurance for that. That's where the cost would have gone. It would have been just another insurance fee on it. And very likely, it's very possible that the holistic sense of that in the reallocating of funds, because that means a couple billion that would have had to have gone to the government for them to spend, could now be redistributed back into the society. The society will be more wealthy for it. So do not let the fear of those things have you believing that only the government can do it. It's like I once read something, a post someone made, where they said if children were sent to school to learn how to walk, within a couple of generations, people would believe that children couldn't learn how to walk unless they went to school. That's what happens in many cases. The government starts doing something and people get the feeling like, if the government don't do this, it will never get done. I was looking at an interview on The Breakfast Club. That morning program is a brain cell killer. But I was looking at an interview on The Breakfast Club nonetheless, and someone was talking about the regulations in democratic cities, Democrat-run places, people who like that kind of government state-run thing. And they were talking about how in California, in order to get a license to cut hair, to be a barber, you need to pay $5,000. And someone was excusing that. The government is doing that to keep people safe, The government needs to regulate the barbers so that barbers keep hygienic, that they don't do unhygienic stuff and cut you and give you infections and stuff. So the government needs to do that. Because they live in California for a generation and that has been there for a long time now. So they assume that if the government wasn't there, barbers would be out there with nasty clippers just wanting to infect people's heads. A barber could open his shop in his shed in Trinidad and Tobago. How many barbers are there out here in Trinidad and Tobago just infecting people? The government doesn't regulate it. The government isn't in control of it. How many barbers are there in Trinidad and Tobago? Very effective ones. And here's what you'd find. Because it's an unregulated field in Trinidad and Tobago, there are barbers still, right now, you could get a haircut from some barbers still bridging $30. There are some barbers still on that, $30, $40 and you good. While there are some haircuts now $200. That's the market. The market does that. Okay, you're willing to pay $200, well, go get your $200 haircut. You're willing to pay $30, well, there's a $30 haircut for you. $3.50 to cut my ass, you see? But that's what private does. And then if the government came in and opened a public barbering a ministry of public grooming, a ministry of public decency, and they open government-run barber shops on junctions all around the country. In a couple generations, we'd have people alive saying that, no, if the government don't run those barber shops, you know how expensive cutting your hair will be? We will can't afford that, Let's not do that. If you can only afford $30 healthcare versus $1,000 healthcare. Here's the thing, Michelle. Here's the thing. What collectivism does is it gives everybody the $10 healthcare, while individualism and free market would allow some people who could only afford the $10 healthcare, you still get the $10 healthcare, and the people who could afford better healthcare get the better healthcare. Like, you are not entitled to someone else's labor. That's reality. You know what's strange? How come the government don't sponsor Queen's Councils? Oh, sorry, King's Councils now. The top in the legals. How come I can't get a King's Council under government freeness if I need to do a lawsuit? So cancer patients get insurance. Do you think we should start charging non-nationals? And Michelle, there are cancer patients right now in Trinidad in our public healthcare system that cannot get treatment. There are cancer patients right now in Trinidad in our public healthcare system that are refusing that treatment and flying out to try and get treatment elsewhere. Is every person with cancer in Trinidad right now, Michelle, getting the treatment in the timely manner for their cancer? Michelle, I know people with cancer. That's not true. That's not true. In Canada, that is better than Trinidad and Tobago in healthcare. There are people who cannot receive some treatment right now in Canada. They're on a waiting list. You're on a waiting list. They tell you that your chemo is set for next year or whenever. Your surgery is set for X time because you have to work on first come, first serve, or however the list is working. Michelle, are you willing to go on record saying there are no cancer patients in Trinidad and Tobago that have delayed treatments? Because that would be dishonest. Yes, delayed. As in, they want something now and the hospital refuses to give it to them now. You see, the reality is you are not the customer. When you go to the hospital, you are not the customer of the public health care. The customer of public health care is the government because the government pays. Who pays is the customer. You aren't the customer. Cannot decide as the patient. You don't have the opportunity to decide. The government decides. And let me show you where that goes in case anyone wants to see. Canada right now has medical assistance in dying, MAID, which is basically murder. You agree and they kill you. And they recommend it as a treatment from the public healthcare system. So there was a lady who went in for treatment, and the treatment she needed for the condition, she was in chronic pain, the treatment she needed for the condition was postponed. She couldn't get it this year. And they gave her the option, well, if you're in too much pain, there's MAID. That's where this goes. So you go for treatment. Well, obviously we don't do that yet, But that's the kind of idea that you're promoting there. When the government is in control of it, you aren't the customer. You don't get to say what happens. You just have to go along with it because you aren't paying. You can't dictate it. The government dictates it. But I rather me dictate it. I am in charge of this. I will pay for it. And the idea that if there's private healthcare, everyone will fall through the cracks. That's not true. The United States has private healthcare majority, and they don't fall through the cracks of medicine. It's not like there are people that complain about the healthcare in the United States, but it's not like you don't receive healthcare in the United States. You do. Emergency healthcare is free. So it's not true. What they told the person, well, the person actually did end up killing themselves. Well, they ended up killing the person. They told the person that if you're in severe pain, you can be offered MAID. And there was another guy who had PTSD from fighting in the war. I believe it was Afghanistan he fought in. He went in for treatment for PTSD. And they recommended, well, how about MAID? What is the number? I think it's 10% of the deaths in Canada right now are attributable to MAID, medical assistance in dying. Medical assistance in dying. Because people can't afford treatment, they choose to die. If I can only afford $30 health and I am unemployed, can't afford insurance, what are my options? Emergency healthcare and live. That's life, Michelle. That is life. If I can't afford a house, what are my options? If I can't afford a car, what are my options? If I can't afford food, what are my options? That's life. Well, no, not health, sir. Yes, health. That is life. There are people right now that need experimental treatments that are only available in select hospitals around the world. They can't get it because they can't afford it. Mr. Rockefeller, the 100-year-old one, just had his 8th transplant or something like that. Do you think you could get 8 transplants of any organ if you wanted it? No, because you can't afford it. But should everyone be able to access those 8 transplants? Because how could you do that with healthcare? That's the nature. You need to afford things in life. That's how life works. You need to work, create resources to exchange your resources for someone else's labor. Healthcare is someone else's labor. You can't expect to not exchange resources for someone else's labor. That's just life. That's the nature of life. That is the very nature of life. If you can't afford it, and I just Googled it for the guy, KCRE, because KCRE regularly comes in with these bold claims. Yes, emergency healthcare is free to uninsured people. What do you think is going to happen if you go into the emergency room with no insurance and no money in the United States? Do you think they're just throwing you out? No, I'm not a fan of Malthusian economics, actually. I am not a fan of it. Some people work legitimately for their success, though. Lol, that's also the reality. Yes, that is the reality of life. That is the reality. I can't imagine telling people, sorry, no test for you, because you can't afford it. Nah, dread. But that happens right now, Michelle. Our healthcare system isn't... And KCRA, so KCRA. A homeless person gets stabbed on the street, goes into the emergency room. What happens? Do they send the bill to their box? To the box on the corner? My God, KCR, come now, man. You lived in the USA and you didn't pay attention? What happens if a homeless person is stabbed in a fight? Do they just leave them bleeding out on the ground there? The emergency services come. Do you have health insurance? No. Stay and die. KCRA, now you're just being dishonest. Do they know some places charge for the ambulance rides as well? Yes. It would be better to be homeless. Americans go to jail cause healthcare free. Well, some do. Some do. That's people at the bottom of the ladder. That's people at the bottom of the ladder. It's not like that for most people. The average working person doesn't struggle with healthcare like that. They get insurance and they're covered for much more and a wider basis than we are covered in Trinidad and Tobago. So you're talking about the middle income people, the middle class. The middle class medical care in the US is better than the middle class medical care here. Because someone who has a stable job, your job pays your insurance, just as our job pays our NIS, your job pays your health surcharge, your job would very likely pay your insurance and they would cover it. There are people in Trinidad and Tobago with jobs that pay health insurance right now that go to the US and get their local health insurance to pay for their US health care. It's not that kind of dystopian reality where people are dying on the streets because it's all a money making thing. Like is that the same case for migrants, the illegal migrants? Venezuela is falling apart. That's reality. There are murders. There's abuse in Venezuela. It's hard to live. But the reality is we can't take all 7 million of the refugees out of Venezuela. All right. Adding y'all, we jumping in brief because I'm looking to dive out just now. Some brief talk. I know room there a while. Yo.
Good night. Hello.
The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. We'll be happy owning nothing. But here's my question. Does the system that currently exists with the public health care, does that help the rich to not get richer? Because we just went through the reality that to get our public services running, what they do is take loans from the private banks. So Answer Bank is getting wealthier off of Caribbean Airlines still, and we get horrible service still. Yeah, Ronnie.
Good night. So just some things I was running through the chat. So one, to answer the person who said if non-nationals should pay, non-nationals do pay to use the healthcare service in Trinidad.
Are you sure?
Only if it is an emergency.
Because
you do not have to pay.
And I'm not saying they shouldn't take them, but I could tell you there are lots of pregnant non-nationals that use our services.
No. In cases of emergency, so if you come in, I was in the hospital this weekend, right? And a Venezuelan woman came in and she was visibly in labor, right? And I was like, they would take her, they would do whatever. Obviously, they don't have a file on her because she wouldn't have gone to clinic. The doctors wouldn't know her because she couldn't do any of those things because it wasn't emergency related and she's not international. If she had to do it, she would have had to pay.
But I don't think that's true, Ronnie. I know Venezuelan women in clinic.
You're supposed to, right?
Well, that supposed to doesn't happen. That does not happen.
The thing about it is, if you do not pay, much like what has happened in America, you go into the emergency and you do whatever, and then they bill you after, right? But with the Venezuelan migrants and other people who don't have nationality here, what they will do, if you seek nationality here, you can lose that privilege because you use the healthcare.
Okay, I didn't know that. I'd have to go into that.
That is something that people don't know and they're not aware of, and they forfeit their privilege or their chance, their opportunity to have nationality because they would have misused or not misused, but they would have used these services that they were not allowed to.
Interesting. I feel though, I don't know how well Trinidad's record keeping is in all of those things. I feel that mightn't be any consequence in the long run. That's just my feeling. I don't know.
that may be, it may be so in a way, but a child is something different. If you come in and you see me apply for residency or whatever, you have a child who's 5 years old, ask you where you had a child, and you tell them amount to, did you pay for your service? No. Okay, great. Bye. But that was just one thing. The second thing, I think a lot of people need to understand, as much as everybody come on, oh, insurance is a scam and insurance is a scam. Listen to me. If they privatize the healthcare and more people had insurance, well, more people would have to have insurance because it will just be a kind of pipeline system where it's like, okay, so it's private, so you need to have insurance because you need to cover these things. I'm sorry. It will kind of sort itself out, but this is a kind of dependency kind of thing we have going on where it's like, I need the government to pay for everything for me, pay for my school and pay for my healthcare and pay for this and pay for that, and I mustn't pay for anything. That's BS.
I agree.
BS. And again, sorry. And the next thing about the America thing where you come in for free, they're not gonna ask you for your image, your healthcare or whatever, your insurance or whatever when they're dealing with you. They'll bill you. Like it have local Trinidadian women who go to America to have babies, right? And they think, well, yeah, I had my baby for free. And the next time they go to get their visa, they can't get it. Because they're using the service. It's the same thing.
Michelle asked pensioners making $3,000 monthly paying rent, how they affording insurance. Now, the thing is, for a lot of those things, it's not impossible for, like in the United States, where they had a government insurance thing, Obamacare, an idea for a government insurance business, and that still ended up in corruption because anything with the government, without the government touches, turns out bad. But those aren't impossible things to take care of. It's not. We already pay the pensioners $3,000 a month. It's not impossible to offer a government insurance for pensioners. That's not an impossible obstacle to overcome. People can't afford groceries right now. They would afford healthcare insurance. I don't know how much I believe grocery prices have gone up. I agree. But I don't know how much I believe that people can't afford groceries line here. Trinidad and Tobago is still a very affluent country. Do not let anyone fool you. We are still a very affluent country. People still buy a lot of luxury goods. There are still Starbucks restaurants opening on every given corner. There are still malls opening regularly. There are still stores inside of malls opening regularly. There are luxury level items being sold on a very regular basis. So, I mean, yes, there are some people that may be struggling, but it's not necessarily everyone. How is the distribution of wealth though? Yes, that might be a bit of an issue, but here's the thing in Trinidad for me. I don't deny there are people struggling. I do not deny that. And I'm not attempting to sound overly privileged. I might be less privileged than you think. But the reality in Trinidad and Tobago is work is not that difficult to come by. That is a fallacy. Most people who want to work. Who is buying these items? The regular Trinidadians? Do you think it's only the West Moorings people that shop for luxury items? With crime, doubles people are getting robbed. Yes, that's true. I don't negate that. Fact. I always say that. Crime is horrible in Trinidad and Tobago. Horrible. The type of work is the issue. Agreed. And part of the problem is that there are some Trinidadians who have qualms about doing certain types of work. That's why Trinidad is a country that's ripe for the picking of illegal immigration, because there are many Trinidadians that frown upon a certain level of work. But there are Venezuelans coming to Trinidad illegally, hiding out somewhere, and still able to make groceries somehow. And they're popping babies on a regular and still are having upward mobility. I'm seeing one down in a certain side. He bought a car. He bought another car. He upgraded his first car. I say these guys are benefiting, and as far as I know, the guy isn't selling anything underhanded. He's working, but they work regularly. So,
Good night.
yes, Michelle, what's up?
All right, how are you? Good.
Willie Bang, I don't think that's how everybody making money, eh?
So, I just want to address a couple things. Remember, I dragged myself out my bed. What I do, part of what I do is financial advice, right? For people trying to access private services that will be paid for and subsidized by the government, right? And this is why I'm a bit passionate about this health insurance thing in particular. And like I said, it's not as rosy as we think it is. It's actually a lot worse. In the years I've been working, it has gotten significantly worse. People are unemployed. It is very difficult to get jobs right now. If you want to open up a store like long time, before we could have put mango and put it on a bin and sell. But now people walking up to you and shooting you for the mango. Already? It's very difficult because society has changed a lot. Crime is really a huge deterrent.
I agree.
And what I do is counsel to try and find help, but these are the things people say. I tried, but you know, and now they are forced to make particular choices. And now we have, unfortunately, but I'm not saying this is for everybody, yeah? But we do have pensioners supporting families now.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's happening. A whole family getting us $3,000 a month.
Yes,
right?
that happened.
And so when we look into things in my field, now I don't believe in complete privatization. I think we should do both government and private together. Government is supposed to help temper the cost of private healthcare. No, I can tell you, information-wise, government in some cases pay less than what a private person will pay if they go to the private institution. That is a fact. Right? So my concern is when we talk about privatizing certain things. If we have people who barely afford them food, which is basic, how do we expect them to afford health and insurance? It's not as easy as we are thinking it is. I just want an awareness of it. It's just because if you have a car, you're privileged. If you can afford rent, you're privileged right now. If you can afford books for your children, this week, just a day, where I work again, we had to buy books for patients and the kids. It is really bad. So if we go to move towards that kind of thing, and I can't see getting anybody better anytime soon, if we privatize healthcare, we are going to lose people. People will end up with that niche thing you talk about where they choose to kill themselves. They will. Because it's too expensive. You know what it is to add a healthcare bill on top of the lights going up. What's going up? I am what I would consider middle class. I have a BSc. I have a pretty okay job. Pretty secure. And I am struggling. I have to cut my phone bill. I have to cut a lot of things. Because food alone is taking up a huge chunk.
Yes.
And I'm not a shopper like cereal and foreign stuff. I'm talking about your market, your rice, your peas, your meat in between. I eat once a week. I'm telling you, and it is difficult, especially when you have kids. So it's easy for us to say, and I will still say I'm privileged because I can pay rent. So it says people have to come and choose. Do I pay rent or do I pay, my light bill this month? So it is challenging. That's just why we have to be careful. All right, Nathan, that's what I just wanted to say. Just be careful when we're talking. It sounds nice, but it is disaster. We have become, yes, dependent to a certain degree. Not saying no. But if you have to go that way, we really have to put social protection systems in place. The people, the lower end, which is becoming more and more, from my observations, working with these people, so the force rate system. So running, Venezuela, when it's foreigners to get free healthcare within the public health system. If, however, the healthcare they require is not provided publicly, and they have to get it done privately, like if the government has to pay for them to go to a private institution, then no, it will not. They don't get that service. The government, in other words, will not pay for them necessarily to go private to do it. But in terms of healthcare within Trinidad and Tobago, yeah, they are not turned away, they are not rejected. They follow them in the team.
Well, I said that they wouldn't reject them, they don't. But it will affect their status if
I don't know.
To receive citizenship. I am telling you.
I would have to take your word for it. I just genuinely don't know about that. I agree with what you're saying there, Michelle, as in there are other considerations to having, and I don't doubt or negate that. Something that there is also to keep in mind is that some of the realities of the situation are caused because of the inflation and wages situation, are caused because the government is involved in so much of the economy. That's why the wages are stagnant. That's why the inflation is going up also. The government is involved in those things. The free market cannot correct them for itself. Now, I'm not saying that the free market is perfect, but if you look around the world, the number one way to raise people out of poverty is the free market. Not government involvement. Governments have tried it for years. They always fail. The number one way is allowing people to use their resources as they see fit and buy what they want as they see fit, with as little coercive influence as possible. And what the government does is they put coercive influence into the system. They force certain things to happen that would not have otherwise happened naturally. Now, Wide Leather says telling UE graduates to hold a strain doing security or KFC is obscene. I don't think it's obscene. You see, this again comes from the wrong thinking. It's like I was talking about with where someone said that pilots spend $600,000 to learn their course, so then they should be paid a lot. That's not how it works. That's not how the system is supposed to work. This is the governmental idea seeping into your mind that if the government pays for you to go and do a BSc, then you deserve to be paid $14,000 as you start. No, you deserve what your abilities can afford you, what your skill is worth on the market. If you go do a BSc and the BSc you do is in gender studies and nobody in Trinidad wants to hire somebody in gender studies, what they want is somebody to do security for them. Well, the only skill that you have that is valuable is standing up in a black uniform with a baton. Yes, you did a BSc and you have your degree and all of that, but there's no value to it. You cannot force value upon that. That's the coercive influence of the government inside there. That it doesn't work like that. If you go to UE, that isn't a default that you're supposed to get a good job. That's part of the problem with the government sponsoring some of these things. I benefited from GATE and I'm happy I did, but the truth is there are disadvantages with that too, because you get people going into there that should not have gone. They had no reason to do that. They had no purpose there. They went and wasted time, wasted resources, wasted money, and now they think after they wasted 5 years of time and resources, they think that they deserve now a certain salary, so they don't want to work under anything $6,000. I know under $8,000, I'm not working anything under $8,000, I deserve this. No, you don't. That's not how the system works. That's not how it's supposed to work. Pauline Adebayo says, I love to dance and yet have a realtor by profession. Thank you. Thank you. This is why we have the problems we do. Having your degree don't mean upper class. Exactly. Exactly. It's all about skills. That's how you apply what you learn academically. Correct. This is why you all see billionaires with no degrees. I deserve to work for $6,000 a month because I'm a survivor. Exactly. I always say the deserve is a very weird word. Deserve is a very weird word. I think only God could really use that word properly.
Next word is privilege.
Sorry, Ronnie, I was just looking for that Nathan. I just say my mind is in gender and development studies, so it is useful.
What's your major?
Okay.
What was your major?
My major is social.
Right. And what is your job? I can assure you, if your major was gender studies, you wasn't making that job.
Very true. Nobody sets a job, and I agree with that.
Yeah, Ronnie, you're saying?
I was just saying, one of the words I really hate to hear is this privilege word. I am not privileged, right? I chose every single thing I chose to do is what led me to where I am. I chose not to end up in crime. I chose not to have a child out of wedlock. I chose not to be very out there, you know. I chose not to party and drink and do drugs and all these things. So I'm not privileged because I could afford to stay in a house and pay my bills. I was smart.
Right. Wait, so people who make those choices aren't smart?
I knew that's where I was going.
Why do people
who made those choices aren't smart? It said you
were some of those choices aren't smart. Doing drugs and partying and these things aren't smart. Having a child out of wedlock isn't the smartest thing.
To you.
No, wait right there. I could see the point of the privilege argument. I don't like the word because it's overused, but I could see the point of privilege because there are privileges. Growing up in a two-parent home is a privilege. You don't have a choice in that matter. That's a privilege. However, what I totally disagree with is that to you idea. There isn't a to you. There's objective reality. Michelle, I know it could sound like a comedian hard there, but I think that's why women end up with their children in jail. Because they have that to you idea that, you know, you have to allow it. Some choices might be bad to you, but maybe for them it was the right choice. No, they are bad choices. They are bad. Making a child out of wedlock versus making the child in a well-substantiated marriage is always the worst choice. Always.
Okay, let me clarify then, because I didn't clarify. Let me add a bit more. When I said to you, I mean, everybody's social circumstance is very different. All right? So somebody having a child out of wedlock may not be a bad situation for them.
So here's why I disagree with that. Because in a situation where somebody has a child out of wedlock versus in a well-substantiated marriage, without fail, basically, it would always be better in the well-substantiated marriage. You see, that's how we end up with all these men playing women, women playing men, and these iffy things. Because people try to question objectivity. They try to say that objectivity isn't objective. There's some subjectivity in this, you know. I feel like a man, and who are you to tell? I feel like a woman, and who are you to tell me what a woman feels like? If I feel like a woman, then I'm a woman. And who knows, maybe he really does. No! I am a man. How could I know what feeling like a woman feels like? It's objectively false. I am not speaking the truth. I am objectively delusional. And it's not caring of you to lean into my delusion and say, well, maybe you never know, you know. There's objective truth. There is objective reality.
Agree, there's objective reality. Okay, so you're speaking about gender. That's science. What I'm saying is not that it's not about objective reality, but it's taking into consideration the entirety of a group. For us to sit here and judge another person, life choices of being smart or not smart, not knowing the challenges that would have led up to those things, and assuming everybody is starting from the same base point is unfair.
Yeah,
I think it's unfair. So I think there was a study, this person did a game, and they had all the children lined up, different ethnicities and so on. They said, if you come from a two-parent home, come forward.
Yeah, I know that game. The privilege game.
Yes. So to tell somebody, well, you know what? I chose not saying anything around it, but just to say, because we all do it, say, well, you know what, if them like that, they choose that. Right? Because at the end of the day, I choose not to have 2 kids. I choose to get married, and I choose. You choose because you had a choice. Right? Some people, unfortunately, mentally, cognitively, this is what they know. This is why sometimes talking to people, speaking to professionals, bring you out. Because sometimes people just get stuck there and they don't know better.
Here's the thing, Michelle, I agree with all that you say there. I agree with all that you say. Circumstances sometimes provide people with bad opportunities and they go on with the bad opportunities. I agree. Where I disagree is saying that they did not make a worse choice, because it is objectively a worse choice. It's like, okay, if you cannot swim and there is an escape path through a river and an escape path running through the forest, and you dive in the river trying to swim across and you drown, that was the worst choice. Maybe you thought the river was glass. Maybe you thought the river was shallow. Maybe it have all kind of maybes that may make it make sense as to why you made that choice. And I could understand why you made that choice. I understand how you ended up there. That's why in my view of the world, I believe in the judge not that you be not judged scenario, where I don't attempt to condemn people and their life based upon those choices, but I am not going to TTV and go bendy on the edges, saying that a bad choice may not be a bad choice. A bad choice is a bad choice. It is a bad choice. And to me, the best way to help people to not make those bad choices is to make a very hard line of what the bad choices are, what the good choices are, and understand that there are people that may make the bad choices, may make the less than perfect choices. There are people that would do that, and we will deal with that as it comes about. But we aren't going to say that the worst choice wasn't a bad choice. No, it was not the best choice. It literally was not. And somebody said, just one thing somebody said, there are single parents that are raising better children than married couples, and I agree. I always try to add that in. That does not mean that single parents cannot raise good children. That is not true. It is not true. Single parents can raise good children. There are married people that do horrible jobs. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you are a single mother who is raising a good child, if you had a good husband raising that child, you would have done a better job. I don't even understand why people attempt to fight it. Yes, I understand you are in that situation. You probably wish you weren't in that situation. Okay, wishes, yes. But don't attempt to obfuscate the reality. And what aggravates me sometimes is I find a lot of older women especially do things like that. You have some of these 40-year-old bitter women made a whole lot of wrong choices, and then they kind of squeeze around and make it seem like their wrong choice isn't a wrong choice, like they aren't miserable right now with their wrong choices, and they're lying to the younger girls, watching these younger girls come up making the same bad choices or not ideal choices they made, and leaving them to do it. In fact, encouraging them to do it, knowing that your choice didn't lead with the best outcome. And that's what aggravates me with some of this. Say it's a bad choice.
What influences to make a choice making or decision making? What would make one person choose to jump in a river and the other person walk through the river?
And that's what I said. I did add in that qualifier. I am sure there are many externalities that help push you in on one side or the other. But here's the reality with that. And this is not what you say to somebody who has already drowned. I'm not going to watch the guy who drowned and say, you see it, good for you, should not jump in here. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, if you are watching at someone on the bank trying to make the decision which path to take, and yes, they have all the circumstances surrounding them, pushing them to dive in the river, you tell them diving in the river Even if all your circumstances push you in that direction, diving in the river is not the best choice. You still tell them that even with the surrounding circumstances, which do exist.
The saying is, if you see someone standing on the bank of a river, deciding to jump in, even though to you it might look like the wrong choice, I may know personally how to swim. So you might think it's a bad choice. However, I have the capacity and the know-how to manage that choice. I'm not saying they are not hard lines. For example, when you talk about good, that's science. You talk about science. Let me go into social science. Get a little more. It gets a little more nuanced.
I think it's more nuanced. I agree it's more nuanced, but I don't think it gets iffy. It gets more nuanced, but not iffy, because I think it's a hard science also. I think there are hard facts of the matter, especially when you look at the outcomes. It's just as hard science as any other outcome. It's just as. Two is better than one.
But I would just like to ask a question. Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just saying. I understand where you're coming from. Like, you may be able, or you may think you're well suited to jump and swim or whatever. But when you're reaching, right, let me say you're reaching and it have a strong undercurrent. Even the best swimmers, we know they suffer in that. Would it have not been better to take the part where you could run and see your way? It is a proven part. You see plenty people run that way, so you know where you could run.
Good question. And right before you answer, Michelle, to add on to that, in terms of what I'm talking about with the objective lines, I can swim and I do not go out into the deep in the ocean, even though I can swim. If you have a path to escape through a river and a path to escape through land, and you can swim, it's still the objective thing to go through the part that doesn't risk you drowning. So yes, I could do this. Maybe you can, but you are increasing the risk objectively. That's what I'm saying. And the problem I have, again, is when we make it seem like these things don't have objective standards. Yeah, Michelle?
Because I agree with what I'm mentioning, that we cannot police human behavior. It is not possible in terms of choices. I'm not talking about police in terms of red light, traffic laws and those things. I'm talking about simple choices in personal choices.
100%.
Who we marry, how much children we have. Yes, they have society.
Correct.
But it's not that you want to come in as China. We cannot police those things. All right?
We can, but go on.
Well, unless you want to come in.
No. I think we can, but it's not through the government. And I think that's what happened in modern society, where we allowed the government to take too much of a forefront rule, where we assume the government must take that rule, not understanding that many of these things were controlled by social groups. Religion micromanages your life. Religion tells you who to marry. As a Christian, you're not supposed to be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. Your religion tells you that. Those are things within the religious scope. Those are things within the familial scope. So, for example, women were part of the shame economy. In societies gone before, women were part of the shame economy. Women shamed people into behaving properly. Now, we try to throw away the stigma and shame from everything. Nothing should have shame. So now we have young ladies with the impulse of the feminine impulse, making the Pretty Pipers page on Instagram, attempting to do what society has always done, where women attempted to shame people into a certain kind of behavior. Those things have policing ability.
It does. Just today, I know someone who told me this story. They were shamed into staying in an abusive marriage that left her with depression and all of that.
because she was shamed in it. So that is not always a good tool to police behavior.
But that's like saying sometimes the police lock up an innocent person. Yes, that does happen, but the police are doing a job. They're policing unhealthy behavior in the society. I think shame is necessary. It polices unhealthy behavior and unhealthy norms in the society. And if we get rid of it, we end up with too much pride, if you know what I mean. So we need that shame. And yes, the shame could be mismanaged. And I think it's more likely to be mismanaged when we attempt to suppress it. So the reason that these young ladies are making the Pretty Pipers page is because the grannies and nannies and the Macome and them not doing the job that they used to do. They're not shaming the girls in the right way. So now they're trying to do it in a whole new way.
Okay. Now I get what you're saying. Well, when you start to talk about, and I heard about this Pretty Pipers thing from my daughter, but that is illegal. So, like I said, certain behavior you can't play. Those said laws against pornography against the law. You can definitely do something about that. Shaming a woman into saying I'm in an abusive marriage with the church or whatever religious or family is going to put them out. As a matter of fact, from my own personal story, my aunt ended up committing suicide because she was sent back because it was a shame in our culture to leave your marriage.
Here's the thing. Here's the sorry, finish. Sorry.
No, so I was just saying there are many balance at the end of the day, and sometimes mistakes are great tools of education. We learn from our mistakes. If we don't make mistakes, we don't make poor choices, how are we gonna learn? You're just gonna force people like sheep in a particular way, and then you're gonna always have the quote-unquote free thinkers who might say, I don't want to be this way. Become rebels and they have chaos. Allow people to make mistakes, and that's how they learn.
I don't agree. Right. I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree that you need to burn to learn. I think the whole idea of education in schooling is the idea that you don't need to burn to learn. You can sit and people can teach you through their own experiences and through the experiences of people that lived thousands of years before. The idea that you need to burn to learn is a kind of primal animalistic idea. We don't need to do that. We have cerebral cortexes that are able to do abstract thought. We could think about situations that we haven't been in, and the idea of pushing out to society that you need to burn to learn and things that are obviously already learned, I find it to be ridiculous. And the thing that I find so ridiculous with this is a lot of the privileged families that talk like that don't teach like that. A lot of those privileged families that talk like, it's good, it's okay, you never know, you could live a promiscuous life, you could probably marry who you could have children outside of, and they don't do that with their own children. They don't do that with their own daughters. They don't treat their children like that. And let's look at societies in general, as the statistics I like to usually bring up. The US statistics are more easily accessible on those things. Look at cultures that have less shame. So the Black American culture, they eschew the shaming. You promote ratchet behavior. I was watching a ridiculous new music video where they're promoting the ratchet girl. Disgusting, but okay. And I remember Trini Hotep in a discussion here, someone was telling him what's the word, what is degenerate behavior? That's white supremacy or some kind of ridiculous thing. Okay, look at that culture that tries to move away from shame as much as possible. Look at the result. Then you have the Indian culture that is obsessed with shame, obsessed with it to an extreme extent. There are lots of horror stories coming out of Indian families with that whole shame and family business and bringing disrespect on your family name. Whoa, if you're an Indian family, there's a lot of that. But do you know what is the wealthiest ethnic group in the United States? Indians. So yes, there can be errors made, but in the holistic sense, if you're looking for the better approach, looking at the outcomes, which one has the better outcome? And I find it so ridiculous that the people who don't train their children like that attempt to push that out into society that, you could do anything, You never know. Maybe you might do the nonsense and become good. No. Shame them. Shame them.
All right, I hear you.
but balance is key, because at the end of the day, what is seventh outcome? Yes, they might be financially wealthy and better that way, but at the same time, they have the high rate of mental illness, high rate of suicide. Japan, I think there's a suicide for it.
Yes.
Children.
Yes.
So, what are we trading on thing? Well,
So, okay, Michelle Sudan. I keep calling your full name and you take off that. Sorry. Have it.
Michelle, okay.
Sorry, Michelle. Okay, Michelle. But you're asking what you're trading off there. Look at the outcomes in the black community. Look at the outcomes in the Indian community. And you're telling me that the outcomes of the lack of shame are better? What is better in the black community? What? Name one thing.
Not being shamed.
Huh?
Not being shamed. I think what is better is that they are free.
What?
That there's a freeness of self, meaning they are more free to be authentic to themselves, be able to do, explore, even in careers, in certain communities, for example, I'll use the Indian community, they only know 2 professions: doctors, lawyers, engineers, 3. They don't pursue any of those careers. Shame.
Here's the interesting thing why I disagree with that. When I look at black culture around the world, nearly all of the black culture is American black hip-hop culture. I don't think they're free. I think, in fact, the black community is the most commercial, consumer-oriented community. The black dollar stays, 6 minutes, compared to the Jew dollar that stays 30 days, and the Chinese or Indian dollar that stays 60 days or 40 days or something like that. 6 hours. Thank you, Trini Hotep. I shared that right on Twitter today. So that freedom is actually not true. And then you look at the second and third generation. So, okay, first generation, Indian Tanti, you had no freedom. Second generation is an engineer, and his child grew up as a millionaire, and his child visited the entire world, have pictures at the Taj Mahal, have pictures on the Eiffel Tower, while your freedom, you became a hustler on the side of the road, have 60 children with 5 different women because you were free, and none of them got anything. Now they could put on the same Timberlands with the same New Era hat, with the same Jordan jerseys and the same jeans, and go on the same corner and stand up free. That's not freedom. I don't want that freedom. The freedom I want for my child is the freedom where they could get the resources to really be free. Not be free to be a consumer at the side of the road.
This is back going up to backward, right? Either one extreme is not healthy in the least.
But
to extreme modification of behavior, you have honor killing in the East, you have women, I don't even have to tell you, you have women on that side of the world.
Yes.
There's the freedom that is enjoyed in the West.
I agree.
Right? Your freedom may be like the financial, economic freedom. Some people might just really be happy living on a piece of land, planting, they've put in the ground, and they're happy, and to them they are free.
Yes, but indiscipline and lack of shame is going to change that reality too, because the black community with the lack of shame, they don't own land. They can't plant a thing. If you're looking for the ranchers who are buying out the land, those would be the Chinese anyway. And yes, there are negative drawbacks, but to me it's like this. If there's a cliff edge, there's a cliff. This is the edge of the cliff. We could walk here, or we could walk all the way on the inside there. Which way do we err? Do we err closest to the edge of the cliff, or do we err furthest away from the edge of the cliff? Which is the better place to err? Okay, the extremities aren't good. I agree. But if we were to err on one side, which side do we err?
Of course, if you have an opportunity, you will own the exposure. And then most people would err on the side of caution. And I'm saying they are fallen various reasons, they choose not to do so.
True.
All right? We cannot choose to manage that behavior and tell them, okay, you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do the next. Then setting ourselves up for some real problems, because the hardest thing to control in this world is human.
I agree. I agree with that.
A lot of problems. So this is why I said balance is needed. So when we look at persons, we see them with, maybe the hearing, whatever the case may be, and we look and we think, okay, we judge, which human do, that's what we do, and think, well, that person didn't make a good choice or a bad choice. We have to become cognizant of the things, what influences our decision making ability, what influences that cognitive process. What is important to you, Nathan, may not be important to me, and that's that. We are different people. Right? To you, getting a child an education, setting up a parents plan, putting those things in place is important to you. To me, it might be I need to go to a party because I have an issue because I have a deep-rooted rejection issue that I need to work on.
Michelle, right? Do you believe that humans basically get satisfaction the similar ways? So, for example, I have the same needs as you basically. I have a need to eat food. I have the same essential nutrients that I need as you. I need H2O, a specific molecule. I need a specific amount of it. Maybe I need a little more or a little less than you, but we both need it. Do you believe that those human similarities are across the board?
I believe it is a need, but the degree to fulfill that need is you.
You see, this is why I don't like, as Trini Hotep called it, the modern liberal thinking, where there's moral subjectivity. There's too much subjectivity, and the reality is, life isn't like that. Life isn't subjective. So, okay, regularly you hear people, don't tell young girls to have no children, You don't know you're fast. Don't ask nobody when they're having a child. You're fast and out of place. You never know. Next thing she don't want a child. There are many women that are happy without children there. Okay. There might be, but the reality is when they do the surveys of women after 60, when they can't have any more, and they ask them, the vast, and the more honest they are able to get the study, as in the more anonymous, the higher the number is, the vast majority of them all wanted children. So, okay, you might be arguing that you might be the 1 in 8 billion idiosyncratic humans that doesn't need the same needs that the other humans need. Okay, you might be. But what are the chances? And if I am a psychologist or a therapist or somebody just giving you advice or somebody giving my child advice looking at your life, what would I tell them to do? Go take the 1 in 8 billion chance that you're the idiosyncratic human that doesn't need what all other humans need? Or do I tell you, listen, bro, you need food like other humans. You can't starve yourself and live off of air. It doesn't work like that. You can't just drink water. It doesn't work like that. Steve Jobs, was it, tried that fruit diet like a bird right before his cancer took him, and it killed him faster. Because you are not a bird. You need the food of a human. You are a human.
You can't tell them that you can't direct. By the way, I'm very morally conservative. I'm just saying that.
I know.
Very morally conservative.
I know.
What I'm saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
I agree.
You can lead, you can guide, you can talk, you can put. But at the end of the day, people will make their decision.
I agree with that.
Should we shame them for those decisions? I don't believe we should shame people for those decisions because, again, people make decisions based on many different things. Shame, not necessarily. Help, yes.
Bruh, yes. You see, this is again why they need the men in society. You know? This is why they need the men. This is why they need the... Shame works really good. Shame is very effective.
Shame kills people.
Okay.
Why? Because of shame.
Okay, oh my goodness.
No, here's why I say okay to that. Licks, somebody could beat a child to death. That doesn't necessarily mean that all corporal punishment is bad. Yes, people could go to excesses. Police kill people. Does that mean that police shouldn't be in society? Think of shame as police. All of the criticisms you give to shame, you could give to police. Police kill people. Should we eradicate the police from society?
You see, nobody can eradicate, right? Shame is not a education.
No, shame. I'm not talking about teaching. Shame isn't for teaching. I could only shame you if you know what to do. I can't shame somebody who's ignorant of it. Then I'm a horrible person. That's not what shame is. Shaming isn't for an ignorant person. They need to know what to do. Shame is when they know what to do and they don't do what they know what to do, then they are shamed.
I think we will speak here because in terms of, I get what you're saying. You know what to do. You still put yourself in that position. Therefore, when it's for the consequences for it, you will play. However, right, I understand that and I agree. So this is why I said maybe we are talking about two different groups or looking at it in a different way. I agree with what you're saying. I'm also saying, like I said, balance. I'm not going to keep you much longer. I actually have to leave now. So I'm still actually dragging off my bed.
My apologies.
So, just I did balance. Shame does not always work. People are dealing with a lot of shame the wrong person to get a bullet.
I think, personally, let me add to this. For shame to work, I think you kind of need to know the person, really and truly. Or on a social level.
Yeah. And be careful when especially your kids are concerned. You're also dealing with a lot. Shame, which we do shame after our kids. We compare our kids to relatives and so, and they, because I can tell you it happened to me. And all I did was buy me years and years and years of depression and thinking that I could not be better than what I am.
But you did get a BSc though.
I did get a BSc thanks to the Lord Jesus. Quite found. But that was my story. Not everybody's story may be that good. That's why we have young people committing suicide.
But Michelle, as a social worker, right before you go, a question on that suicide thing.
Yeah.
Why do you think that in the time where we deleted the most shame from, let's say, the 50s till now, the youth suicide rate has probably 10 times jumped? Why is that? As the societies have had less shame, more young people are killing themselves, if shame is the cause?
I don't know if more people are killing themselves.
More people are killing themselves. That's fact. Especially young people. All Western countries where shame has been decreased over the last 50 years have had a astronomical increase. If you look at the curve, it's not this, it's this. Have had an astronomical increase in suicide rates among young people, particularly within the last 20 years, when especially shame was suppressed. So why, as shame became suppressed more, have more people killed themselves?
When shame is fear over.
Sorry?
All right. Some people, I think they may just, yeah, people might be shamed, but they also fear killing themselves as well, or doing something drastic themselves because of the more shame.
Well, then that seems like the shame is the secret. Okay, people, you heard it here. If you don't want them to off themselves, make sure you shame them about that too.
No, you know what you do, but the thing is, all the systems from the love. When love does not exist within families and society, then you have to use shame. Shame is not too if you use love. And I'm not talking about free from love. Meaning, to me, teach something or cuff my child and say, no, I'm talking about discipline is different. I'm talking about love where a child feels that they can talk to a parent. Where love, where that is communication.
Isn't love wanting the best for someone?
Love is wanting the best of someone, but it is also loving them enough to know that if they make a mistake and they call, they can come to you and say, they made a mistake.
Yeah. All that is true. All that is true. But I don't want them to make a mistake if I love them.
Okay, of course you do.
Right. So I would attempt as best as I could to guide and other things to make sure they don't make those mistakes, right? If I love them. Love isn't allowing you to. If I love my daughter and I see her toddling her way to the hot tower, I am going to grab her as quick as possible. And if I have to run from a distance to grab her, she might be frightened when I grab her. Or I might shout at her, "Hey!" And she will jump. And when she jumps, she might cry. I might cause my daughter to cry in that case.
Meaning in terms of mortal danger.
But wait. The thing is, some of those things that people aren't shamed about anymore do lead to mortal danger. They mess up their lives, and by the time they're 40, they're miserable and they're dying. So it is mortal danger. And which is worse? Which is worse? Burning your finger in a tower as a 2-year-old, 1-year-old, or living 30 years of pure, chaotic, insane depression because of choices you made as a youth?
What leads to mortal danger in that situation is the lack of support. If a person lack of support, if they make a mistake, okay, I'll give you an example. My husband and I was talking about this recently with our daughter. She's of dating age. And my culture, we don't do marriage, sex outside of marriage by religion. Don't deal with it. Those are taboos. Pregnancy, okay. However, we were having a discussion, and I said to him, if he was of your belief, make sure and take that in heart. We don't do this kind of thing and shame. And my belief is, at the end of the day, we can shame and we can say what we want. She's going to do what she probably wants to do anyway. Mistakes happen. Listen, what I'm saying.
No, I don't understand what you're saying. You know. Right. Yeah. Sorry.
Things happen. People make mistakes. Alright, we are human, we are not perfect.
Correct.
I rather my child be comfortable with me rather than fear me to the point where she, every time, a mistake happens and she doesn't need to do it. Because people make a mistake. I'm sure of it, she's human. What I'm saying, what I said was, if that happens, I'm going to support her. And I can tell you from experience, I've supported recover.
That's why fathers just keep boys out of jail, I just letting you know. Let your husband do the disciplining, That's why fathers keep people out of jail. Because you all are too soft. And you believe that's their subjectivity in those things. It's not about support. That support thing. They're obsessed with support, diversity and inclusion. And you support them. And you must affirm them and make sure you affirm them. The world is obsessed with support and affirmation. And more people are depressed than ever. Because you cannot affirm people into a solid life. That's not how it works. Life is difficult. And you have to make difficult choices. And I need to let you know that they are difficult choices. I can't affirm and confirm and support you into everything. That's why you need the men out there. Ronnie, go.
I think this is going to be my last part. When I said it, when I said what I said, I meant what I said. But I don't think I should walk down the road and shame every pregnant person that's suffering on their hand. But I think that the practice should be shamed.
That's what enforced monogamy is.
The practice of child before marriage, the practice of suicide, all them things should be shamed. When people think about it, they must say, "Way boy, everybody will not talk about me. Everybody will not look at me. Everybody will not stare at me." Probably I should stay away from that. Probably I'm not ready for that. And I think we should shame the practice of it, not necessarily the people. In this case, but I totally somehow I say I think and to say that some people's decision is good for them and right for them. It is not. It may be right for you as a person, right? I might be like, I don't want a man is, And I want a child, so I don't make a child. But is it best, the situation I have created, is it best for the child? You understand? It might be good for me, might necessarily be good for the child that I bear.
Okay.
So, all of this, what is right for me, and the selfishness in the world, it leads to just destruction. As we were talking about earlier, and I hope you all see when you heard it, single motherhood, it leads to a lot of bad things. You understand? For me, and I always said it, I've said it for years and years and years, if by chance, by some devil's work, I will be pregnant outside of marriage, the man will have to take his child. Because that would be best for the child. You understand? But again, I just don't make certain decisions because it's what first I grew up in, well, I didn't grow up in Pakistan, but I grew up around culture Christians. I don't want to buy talking about me. I don't really talk about me. I walk it up there with my big belly. And people watch me. I know she had no husband. Me, I stay away from them things. So a lot of decisions people could stay away from. But they don't have to stay away from it because it isn't looked down upon. So they can walk around doing whatever with their head held high. Because nobody has a problem with it. Anyway, my phone's gonna die. Room has said nothing for the night, Room. I always enjoy hearing from you.
All right. Well, in that case, it's nearly 12:30, so we'll hear the closing statements. I believe that was Rooney's zone. If Room is still there, you could go, and I know Michelle has to go too. You're staying. We dragging you later and later. Room, you there? I guess he isn't there right now. Yeah, Michelle. Any closing statement?
I just see what there.
Sorry.
No, I saw what so balance is needed.
Agreed.
Shame is not the best. It is a tool, yet, but not the best to modify behavior. Because the consequences of using shame are disastrous, especially if used in a very negative, punitive kind of way. It can cause people suicides. It can cause people to remain in horrible marriages, abusive situations, things like that. So we need to be fair and balanced how we look at a particular situation. Because they're so dynamic, and each person, each household is different. Each person in that household is different. Treat with it accordingly. And to compare the trans, because I saw Willie Bang talking a lot about she identifies and identifies, right? Or he, I'm not sure, sorry. You have to be careful with that too, because remember there's a mental health issue, diagnosable mental health issues, which is different from social issues, right? When we talk about transgender and identifying and coddling, there's a difference there between that versus a social situation between pregnancy, for example, or homelessness or poverty, which are called social, social problems, right? So that's just what I want to say. Every human thinks impact differently. Nathan, when you are living room, something happened, you respond differently with the life because of our histories. So I think we should remember these things, respect our people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes are learning to as well. Yeah, and give people that grace to be able to make a mistake and learn from them. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Always have some wise and calm words, and your voice always just so like I need to train my voice, to always have that, that kind of. I just don't have that. I have to get that. Always a pleasure. And I think you're 100% right on the balance. A mosquito only harassing me here. I catch him. What skills? What skills? You all seen that? I catch the mosquito with one hand. That is skills. Dead. Anyway, I agree. Balance in everything. Balance is extremely important. Getting the right balance of which to do. I do agree that shame isn't the only tool. I do believe it's a very effective tool though, and I don't think that necessarily it is as negative as it could seem. As I've said before, my family, one of the things we regularly shame each other on is if you're getting fat. And I could tell you it works. If I walk in by my father and he say, "Hey, what is that, eh, boy? You're looking like your belly going down to the ground." I'm like, "Ooh." It's shame in a way, but you know, there is a balance of familiarity, and you know they're not trying to bring you down. They're letting you know that this thing could be getting out of control, and that's not a positive thing. People were talking about accountability, and I think that's what shame is. Sometimes we're trying to run from the word because there have been negative connotations related to the word, but that is what shame is, a kind of accountability. So y'all can join the Mindful group over there on what's that app? The app name just slipped in my mind. And that's what Ronnie is talking about there. The link is right there on my TikTok profile. You could Discord server. You could head over there, and you know you'd be able to chat with some of us inside there, those of us that are inside there, and you'd know if I'm not live, where I am, etc., etc., etc. But as usual, people, it was nice. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. I am Nathan Springer. This has been the Mindful Live. No, it doesn't work for me. I totally disagree, Defense. Maybe. And I will see you guys for the next one. Peace, people. I'm out. Hold it down.